Chapter 1397. Chu Jiang also clicked his tongue. Smart kids remember network super fast hands. These weapons that Mo Tianji wanted were all used for surprise attacks. When they were forced into a corner and attacked by the enemy, they could also automatically rebound to kill the enemy. It was obvious that Mo Tianji was preparing for the future. Chu Yang busied himself for an entire day to fulfill his brother's strange requests. It was finally completed in the end. The gold essence jade was used up, and the other few pieces of top-grade meteoric iron and strange ores were also almost used up. After calculating for a moment, he realized that he had used up a total of 70,000 kilograms of strange metal to completely refine the essence. This time, the Calamity Sword didn't participate in the absorption. It absorbed all the essence of the golden crystal iron into the weapon. Other than ray boutons, which was made to ensure sharpness and rough craftsmanship, everyone else did their best. Chu Yang was very confident that Gu Duxing's Black Dragon Sword, Dong Wushang's Dark Saber, Xia Danqiong's Viburnum Flower, Ao Xian's Dragon King Sword, and Mo Tianji's Purple Jade Flute, and Mo Qingwu's Dreaming of a Gentle Dance Saber could become weapons with spirituality. As for Ji Mo's and Luo Kuti's swords, it would depend on how well they communicated with their weapons. If they didn't communicate with their weapons, even if they held a divine sword in their hands, it would still be cold metal. It wasn't that the material wasn't good enough. What was worth mentioning was Mo Tianji's Purple Jade Flute. Out of consideration for his uncle, Chu Yang made it completely of purple crystal jade essence, and even mixed in 2 pieces of souls of the purple crystal. Mo Tianji loved the Purple Jade Flute so much that he couldn't put it down. He put it to his mouth and blew. The sound of metal and stone pierced through the air. Mo Tianji was overjoyed. GMO winked and came forward. "Brother Ji, how does it feel to blow the flute?" Mo Tianji was delighted. Without thinking, he said, "Great! Very great!" GMO laughed. "Then why don't you blow it for me?" Mo Tianji's face turned pale. He was careless and fell for this little trick. Chu Yang and the others laughed. Mo Tianji took a deep breath. He said to Ao Xian, "Xian, weren't you curious about where that extremely bright gem of yours went? Danqiong, do you know who was the one who scared your wife to tears at your husband's party? Du Xing, do you know who came up with such a bad idea to disturb the bridal chamber on your wedding night? No, I won't say anything else. GMO often laments, without Rui Butong by my side to take a beating, my hands always feel itchy. Little Wolf, it's been hard on you to call him brother every day. What are you doing up in the middle of the night? All of us know. Who said so? He. Wu Shang, someone is very arrogant. He said that he had suppressed Dong Wu Shang and seized the position of third brother. It is said that he once said that even Saber Supremacy could only eat his fart behind him. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what you guys think about many things, but if it were me, Mo Tianji, I wouldn't be able to tolerate it. Suddenly, the heavens and the earth in the rear courtyard fell apart. Everyone looked at GMO. It was as if they had seen an irreconcilable enemy. GMO's complexion turned yellow in an instant, and he almost started crying. Under the fierce gaze of this brother of his, GMO's legs went soft. Second brother Mo. Woo. You don't have to be so vicious. He didn't finish speaking. He wanted to run away. Beat him up. It was unknown who shouted. Following that, his brothers swarmed over, and in a few moves, he was overthrown to the ground. Then, a series of pi pi pa pa pu tong sounds rang out. His voice was hurried, like the wind blowing and rain hitting the banana leaves, but it was a little rough. Mo Tianji leisurely fanned himself with his folding fan. We are all brothers. Don't hit him too hard. Moreover, beating him once would be too easy for him. Let's take it slow and steady. Let's come up with a few different tricks every day, so as to avoid making second Master Ji uncomfortable and letting third brother Ji take advantage of him. Presumably, he wouldn't be happy about this. GMO screamed at the top of his lungs. Second brother Mo, what kind of deep hatred do I have with you? I just said one wrong thing. Mo Tianji smiled in a carefree manner. After a long while, Mo Tianji fondly played with his new weapon. He was enjoying the sight of GMO getting beaten up. Meanwhile, Chu Yang was wholeheartedly dreaming of a gentle dance saber for Mo Qingwu. Mo Qingwu sat next to Chu Yang with her hand on her cheek. She was completely focused. At first, she was still looking at the changes of the saber. Later, she was looking at Chu Yang's face. It had to be said that a serious man who was completely focused on doing something was extremely charming. At this moment, Chu Yang was exactly like this. The little girl blushed. But she still couldn't help but look. At first, she was secretly looking. Then, she blushed and lowered her head. Later, she looked openly. After a long time again, GMO was crying in snot. He stuck out his pig-like head and said, "Brother Tianji, I was wrong. Second brother Mo, I was wrong. I've changed. I'm really not human. Please be magnanimous and let me go. Just treat me like a fart and let me go." Mo Tianji studied his fan, his flute and his sword seriously. He turned a deaf ear to GMO. He just didn't look at GMO. At night, Mo Qingwu's saber was finally completed. Moon Breeze also came over at Chu Yang's invitation to have dinner with Chu Yang and the others. Everyone was sitting at the banquet table. Only GMO was being ostracized. Wherever he sat, he would be attacked. So, he had no choice but to compromise and take a big bowl. Then, he picked some food with his chopsticks and carried it to one side to eat. Dong Wushang stretched out his hand and broke off a piece of the big bowl. GMO looked around pitifully. No one paid him any attention. Knowing that he had angered everyone, he swallowed his anger and squatted at the side to eat. Everyone was laughing in their hearts, but deliberately ignored him. They looked at each other from the corner of their eyes. He was like a beggar begging for food at the foot of the wall, a beggar who had just been beaten up. Rui Badong finally couldn't hold back and challenged Gu Duxing. In his mind, he should challenge Gu Duxing first, and then Big Brother Chu Yang. Although he would definitely be caught up or even surpassed by these guys in the end, Rui Badong wanted to leave behind a glorious memory now. His memory this time was extremely glorious. Gu Duxing had used the newly forged and strengthened black dragon sword to pierce more than 300 holes in her clothes. More than 100 of them were bleeding. Even the belt of her pants had been cut. The black dragon sword seemed to be alive as it circled around Rui Fenghuang's little brother. Cold sweat broke out on Rui Butong's forehead. His little face was sallow with fright. When Gu Duxing finally sheathed his sword, Rui Badong had already changed from a phoenix to a dragon, the azure dragon. If Gu Duxing was already like this, how would Rui Badong still dare to challenge Chu Yang? Rui Badong, who was scared out of his wits, went to change his clothes while trembling with fear. He kept thanking the heavens. It was all thanks to second brother Gu's good swordsmanship. Otherwise, if he had made a mistake, he would have become a sinner of the Phoenix clan. After the meal, Yuling Xue was in high spirits. He exchanged blows with each of the Tribulation brothers. Then, it was 2 people in a group, 3 people in a group, and finally, all of them together. In the end, of course, they were all defeated. Supreme Martial Artist, you said excitedly. Not bad. You actually made me take 2 steps back. This sentence made the proud Lord Sword Master and all the brothers speechless and ashamed to the extreme. Mo Tianji was in charge of the battle tactics. Long after the fight, Rui Batong and Luo Kadi were still lying on the wall like dead dogs, not moving at all. These 2 guys were in charge of groping. In short, all the dirty tricks were done by the 2 of them. Therefore, it was a tragedy. In the second half of the night, amidst the laughter, Mo Tianji began to arrange the battle. Under Ji Mo's shameless request, bowing and begging, Mo Tianji showed mercy and allowed GMO to be the first to go, allowing him to escape from the sea of bitterness. Before Ji Mo's cheers died down, Mo Tianji added another sentence. Gu Duxing and GMO will go together and take care of each other. GMO's face turned flat on the spot. Among all the brothers, he was not as afraid of Chu Yang as Gu Du-xing. Chu Yang usually just said a few words, but Gu Du-xing directly attacked. Back then, when Second Master Ji successfully joined the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, he was beaten into it by Gu Du-xing. Although Chu Yang had some doubts about this arrangement, he did not ask. Instead, he secretly transmitted a few words to Gu Du-xing. He still remembered that Mo Tianji said last night to let Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong go first. Why did Mo Tianji change his mind today? Gu Du-xing and GMO set off very quickly. Only in the afternoon did Mo Tianji set off with Chu Yang and the others. They went out of the Chu clan's gate with great momentum. Yuling Xue followed at the back, holding the line, invisible and formless. Why did you let Du-xing and GMO go first? On the way, Chu Yang found an opportunity. I originally wanted to let Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong go first, but after thinking about it, although they are from the Dragon and Phoenix races, it might not be a good thing for them to go, said Mo Tianji. Why? Chu Yang was confused. Wouldn't the Dragon and Phoenix races complement each other if they went to the land of dragons and phoenixes bringing prosperity? Why was it not a good thing? There are skeletons of dragons and phoenixes there, and their power should be complete. And Mo Tianji's expression was solemn. If Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were to sense the force field there, I'm afraid it would harm them instead. Chu Yang immediately understood what Mo Tianji was worried about. The land of dragons and phoenixes over there might not have no connection with the dragon and phoenix races. If there was really no connection, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong would have the same effect as the others. But if there was really a connection, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong could sense it, but the enemy might also sense them. If that was really the case, it would be like sending sheep to the tiger's den. If we go this time, the traitor will realize that we are no longer in the Chu clan by this evening at the latest. Based on the Invisible Falcon's speed, the Shao clan should be able to get the news by tonight. And Mo Tianji said in a low voice. What will they do when they get the news? I wish everyone a happy new year. After staying up all night, I've finally finished writing. I'm going back to my hometown to celebrate the new year. I wish everyone a happy new year. GRQ. Chapter 1398. Chu Yang pondered. If I were the Shao clan, I would beat them at their own game and set up an inescapable net in front of the dragon and phoenix claws in the mine. Of course, we also need to increase our vigilance outside. We need to use strict vigilance to numb the enemy and make them fall into a trap to kill them. And Mo Tianji smiled. Yes. So, we need to slow down. Firstly, we need to give Duxing and GMO time to investigate first. Secondly, we need to let the Shao clan set up the trap first. Then, we need to give them 1 day and 1 night to prepare. On the 3rd night, we need to create some commotion to let them know that we are already there and about to fall into the trap. Then, we can destroy the Shao clan's camp directly at the time when they guess that we are going to act. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Brilliant plan! And Mo Tianji smiled sinisterly. This plan depends entirely on whether the traitor is responsible. Chu Yang laughed silently. Wei clan hated him to the core. Not being responsible was the strangest thing. GMO and Gu Duxing continued forward. Along the way, GMO was extremely obedient after being disciplined by Gu Duxing. He did whatever he was told. Even so, he was still beaten up 8 times. Useless thing! You have embarrassed me! Second brother Gu said. I don't blame you for playing a prank on my wedding night. I also didn't beat you for others. I just beat you for being useless. Even Rui Badong is a 5th grade supreme martial artist. You are only 2nd grade. And only 2nd grade. Gu Duxing was furious. GMO lowered his head, his face full of shame. Gu Duxing had the right to say so. Because, even if Rui Badong was a 5th grade supreme martial artist, and Gu Duxing was only a 3rd grade supreme martial artist, Gu Duxing still beat Rui Badong up in front of everyone. If it was GMO who went up, it would probably only take half a breath. Although Gu Duxing beat and scolded GMO, Among the brothers, he was the closest to GMO. This continuous beating and scolding was also extremely exasperated. GMO forced a smile. Second brother. As you can see, I also feel that Little Wolf and I are still a little low among our brothers. He sighed deeply. When it comes to aptitude, the two of us are somewhat lacking. Now, Big Brother and Second Brother are Sword Supremes, Dong Wushang is Saber Supremacy, Mo Tianji is a Divine Strategist, and Rui Badong has the Phoenix bloodline. Ao Xieyun has the bloodline of the Dragon race. Although Xie Danqiong doesn't have any special bloodline, once that viburnum flower appears, even you and Dong Wushang have to be cautious. In fact, they might even have to retreat. Only the wolf cub and I are left. GMO was somewhat desolate. Our aptitudes aren't high. And we don't have any special bloodline either. Nor do they have any outstanding specialties. Second brother Gu, you also know that some time ago, Little Wolf actually cut off all of its flesh and blood in order to practice martial arts. He practiced until he fainted. I, your little brother, also wish that I could pull out every single bone in my body to practice martial arts. But talent. GMO looked up at the sky and sighed. The two of us. I know him, and he also knows me. We haven't slept for half a year already, working so hard, we can only barely keep up with the rest of the brothers and then break through with the help of Big Brother's strength. GMO hung his head dejectedly and said in a rare heavy tone, Second brother. Everyone practiced together, and all of you advanced by 10 feet. I could only move by 2 feet. Everyone wanted to rest, so the wolf cub and I secretly got up. The two of us took turns massaging each other to relax, and then we started. All the time, all the energy. Because of this, Luo Kadi didn't worry about marriage anymore. But we still couldn't keep up. Sometimes. I really want to die. Before he finished speaking, his butt was kicked hard. Gu Duxing scolded angrily. You want to die? Sure. If you want to die, then hurry up. I'll watch you die. Don't dilly-dally. GMO pursed his lips, and tears actually flashed in his eyes. After a long time, he suddenly threw himself onto the ground and cried loudly. Gu Duxing's eyes flashed with tears, but he pursed his lips and controlled himself from comforting him. Comforting him at this time would only make him weaker. The most difficult part of a man's heart could only be walked by himself. GMO cried very sadly, very repressed. A young talented and enlightened. It could be said that GMO was already the idol of all the youths in the world. At the age of 21, he was already a second-grade supreme martial artist, facing a tribulation. With such cultivation, no matter where he stood, he would be the idol of everyone. However, he could not do it with his own brothers. Compared to his brothers, he was still very weak. GMO was also a proud person, how could he tolerate it? He had been repressing it all the way until now, and he couldn't take it anymore. I don't know if everyone can understand this feeling. For example, it's like going to school. A person in an ordinary school is always the top, but when he finally gets into a key high school, he realizes that there are geniuses everywhere, and almost everyone is stronger than him. This is a kind of torture. Let me say this specifically. At that time, I was like this. If I couldn't defeat myself, it would really be a kind of destruction. And at that time, I didn't defeat myself. Sigh, I'm too long-winded. I'll add another 200 words in this chapter. I'm useless. I feel like I can only exist as a clown among my brothers. GMO cried loudly. Gu Duxing stood in front of him with a cold face and black clothes, watching him cry, not moving at all. After a long time, GMO's crying gradually quieted down. Are you done crying? Gu Duxing asked coldly. GMO wiped his tears. Sobbing, he said, I don't want to cry. You also know how to embarrass yourself? Gu Duxing sneered. Damn it, why don't you try? GMO was furious. Gu Duxing snorted and slowly said, When we left, Big Brother whispered a few words in my ear. He wanted me to pass it on to you. What did he say? GMO panicked. Boss said, as long as you cry, I'll tell you. Like now, you're indeed crying. Gu Duxing's cold and stiff lips revealed a hint of a smile. Useless thing! Ji Mo's breathing quickened. Tell me quickly, what did Boss say? Boss said, as long as you can get through it, overcome your inner demons, and continue to improve, then, you should know that when you truly transform into a strong person, there's a supreme grade boundary between immortal and mortal. Gu Duxing grinned. Do you know what the boundary between immortal and mortal is? Ji Mo's whole body trembled. Even his lips were trembling. When crossing that boundary, everyone has a chance to change themselves. Gu Duxing smiled. We can't change anymore, but you and Little Wolf can. Only the two of you can. Because you have the template, but we don't. But to grasp that opportunity, you must know in advance and be mentally prepared. Moreover, you must withstand all the pressure. Where can you go? If you can't, then no one can help you. Ji Mo's whole body trembled like a sieve. Really? Absolutely true. Gu Duxing laughed mischievously. Have you ever heard Big Brother tell a lie? No, GMO said affirmatively. Then, his face flushed red with excitement. He clenched his fists tightly. I will definitely surpass the boundary between immortal and mortal. Then, he said discontentedly. Second brother Gu, you're so mean. You're so mean. How could you hide such good news from me the whole way? Gu Duxing raised his eyebrows. Boss asked me to do so. Why don't you go back and settle the score with him? Ji Mo's whole body relaxed. He only felt that his life was full of hope, and he chuckled. He laughed and said, Do you think I'm stupid? Gu Duxing laughed. The supreme grade boundary between immortal and mortal naturally didn't have this kind of bone structure transformation. But Chu Yang had made up his mind to let GMO and Luo Kadi complete the bone structure transformation at that time. Otherwise, these two brothers of his would be crushed by the excellence of their brothers sooner or later. In this section, Chu Yang saw it clearly. And Mo Tianji understood in his heart. GMO and Luo Kadi also knew in their hearts. Therefore, Chu Yang had already made thorough preparations. And even Gu Duxing didn't know about this matter that Chu Yang mentioned. And Chu Yang also didn't intend to let anyone know. Even after the transformation, he didn't intend to let them know. He only wanted to let GMO and Luo Kadi know that this was the result of their own efforts. Gu Duxing smiled and said, I'm only responsible for telling you. As for your fellow sufferer Luo Kadi, I'll leave it to you. GMO was so excited that he did a somersault. He gritted his teeth. I'll definitely make that guy feel like he's in heaven. He even cried today. Damn it, he wants to know without crying or making a fuss? Dream on. Wahahaha. GMO was serious. Flashing with excitement and malice, it was obvious that he was already looking forward to how to deal with Luo Kadi. Gu Duxing let out a long sigh of relief. Aspen Valley. As the name implied, there was a stretch of aspen trees that rose into the sky. On average, they were so thick that it would take 5 people to wrap their arms around them. They were like giants standing in the entire valley. Within hundreds of miles, there wasn't a single other tree. On the opposite side, there were dense parasol trees. They were also tall and straight. The diameter of each tree was even thicker than the aspen trees. On the parasol trees there were black birds' nests formed by natural trees. According to an ancient legend, planting a parasol tree would attract phoenixes. And the birds' nests that appeared on the parasol trees were called phoenix nests. Everyone should be familiar with this legend. Right now, Gu Duxing and GMO were quietly lying in a huge phoenix nest. From their position, there was a huge mine 5 miles away. At this moment, there were people going in and out. And the legendary land of dragons and phoenixes was here. Do you feel anything? GMO whispered telepathically. No. Gu Duxing said indifferently. I only feel that there are many experts here. The security is tight. And there's a kind of obscure energy, as if it's being provoked. If I'm not wrong, it should be the power of dragons and phoenixes. From this point of view, the corpses of dragons and phoenixes should still be here. GMO took a breath. I want to go down and take a look. No! Gu Duxing was shocked. It's too risky. There are so many experts here. If I go down, I'll only be courting death. Don't be rash. GMO turned around and said seriously. It's precisely because of this that I want to go down. I keep feeling that this is a huge trap. And it's a trap specially set up for us brothers. We came first. If we don't find out clearly, when the brothers come, they'll probably be at a disadvantage. Gu Duxing pondered for a while and said, In that case, I'll go down. You wait here. It's not that I'm looking down on you. You're better at fighting than me. But when it comes to this, you're right behind me. Even if I fart, you won't be able to smell it, GMO said disdainfully. Besides, if I get caught, no matter what you do outside, you'll be faster than me. It'll be more convenient. If you get caught, then I might really be at my wit's end. Gu Duxing thought silently for a while. Finally, he said slowly, Be careful. GMO raised his eyebrows. Nonsense. I'm still waiting for the boundary between immortal and mortal. Then, he leaned over and whispered something in Gu Duxing's ear. Gu Duxing's eyes widened. This works too. GMO was full of confidence. Don't worry, I'm possessed by MOTNG right now. This plan is absolutely flawless. Gu Duxing was speechless. I saw everyone's New Year's greetings. Thank you. I wish you all happiness. Gee, I rushed back to edit it, and then rushed back immediately. Tomorrow's update will be at 17 p.m. Gee. Chapter 1399. Under Gu Duxing's gaze, GMO put down his sword. His first action was to touch his own buttocks. He looked like he was about to vomit, but he did not put on any makeup. His face was still swollen, and now his eyes were swollen from crying. He pulled his hair, making it look like a chicken's nest. Smart kids remember network super fast hands. Then the two of them went down the tree like a wisp of smoke. Then they took a detour and went in the opposite direction, escaping more than 100 miles away. Then they rushed over in a panic, as if they did not know where to go. Along the way, strong winds blew, and the entire sky above Aspen Valley was like a hurricane. The Shao clan experts in the valley were instantly alerted, and they all looked up. And at this time, GMO roared, and with a bang, a mountain of dirt was lifted up. He roared, I'll fight it out with you. Today, either you die or I die, Gu Duxing shouted. Hand over that thing. I'll leave your corpse intact. GMO laughed bitterly, and his desolate and sorrowful aura filled the sky. Under everyone's gaze, a mountain suddenly flipped over in a faraway place. In an instant, the whole earth was shaking, like a tsunami. GMO immediately leaped up, and then he hit his own chest with his palm. With a scream, he used his original voice to roar. I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. He spat out a mouthful of blood, spasmed in midair, and fell down in the direction of the mine like a kite with a broken string. The dust behind him had already covered the sky, and he could not even see his own fingers. It was as if countless ancient gods and demons were chasing after him. Many of the Shao clan experts jumped up and looked into the distance. However, the sky was covered in dust and smoke. How could they see anything? The only thing that could be seen was a figure that seemed to have lost the ability to control himself, somersaulting in midair as he plummeted down. With such a rapid descent, none of the Shao family experts at the side of the mine dared to step forward to catch him, nor did they have the time to react. In a flash, GMO's body smashed into the mine like a meteorite. He let out an earth-shattering scream, and it was a scream. But it was the real deal. If he wanted to put on an act in front of these experts, he had to be completely real. With a loud crash, Second Master Ji's body smashed through several hundred feet of the mountain wall and landed heavily in the mine. Along the way, cracking sounds never ceased. All the bones in his body had probably been broken into countless pieces. Then, he let out a miserable groan. Even if I die, that purple crystal soul of holy crystal, you won't be able to get it. His eyes rolled back, and this time, he was truly unconscious. Purple crystal soul of holy crystal? In the mine. A purple-robed Shao family expert raised his white eyebrows and said in shock, "Keep him here!" The experts of the Shao clan, who were originally shocked, wanted nothing more than to grind Jimo's bones and scatter his ashes. But when they heard the words purple crystal soul of the holy crystal, they were immediately stunned. A black-clothed and masked figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the dust cloud. His eyes shot out a terrifying murderous intent as he coldly shouted, "Since that's the case, I can't have it. No one else can get it." Suddenly, the long sword lit up. He swung it down fiercely from high up in the sky. A sword aura that almost split the heavens and earth struck down like a bolt of lightning. The shining sword aura split the entire mountain in half. It struck mercilessly at Jimo's unconscious body. "Block it!" A loud shout. Below, more than 10 Shao clan experts, regardless of their cultivation level. They attacked at the same time. Gu Duxing had already used up all his strength in this attack. It was extremely fierce. Before he attacked, he didn't dare to use his full strength for fear that these Shao clan bastards wouldn't take him seriously. Once he saw that the Shao clan had attacked, he was relieved and used 120% of his strength at the same time. There was a loud boom. The 17 Shao clan supreme martial artists who attacked. 4 of the weaker ones spat out blood and fell out on the spot. The others also swayed violently. Fear and trepidation appeared in their eyes. This black-clothed man who suddenly appeared was actually so strong. More than 10 of them attacked together. Although it happened in a hurry and they didn't use all their strength, it was definitely not something that an ordinary 5th grade supreme martial artist could take on. As for those below 5th grade, they didn't even need to consider. In midair, Gu Duxing let out a muffled groan. He was thrown up like a ball and flew up 1,000 feet into the sky. He raised his head violently and spat out a big mouthful of blood. He was shocked. Just these people who attacked were already shockingly strong. He really didn't know how many more people the Shao clan had deployed here. There was a whooshing sound and a few figures leaped into the sky. They closed in on Gu Duxing. Gu Duxing retreated and slid out a few hundred feet. He said coldly, "Who are you people?" The leader, an elder, asked gloomily, "Who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously in the territory of the Shao clan?" Gu Duxing was startled. He asked, "Shao clan?" "Yes." Autumn sword aura. Suddenly he turned around and flew out like a bolt of lightning. He shouted, "Since the people of the Shao clan are here, then it's my fault for being rash today. I'll come and apologize another day. The mountains are high and the rivers are long." That expert from the Shao clan didn't expect the other party to disappear without a trace with just a sentence. "Chase!" one of them shouted. That purple-robed elder said coldly, "No need to chase. If a 5th grade supreme martial artist wants to escape, who can catch up? All of you, go down!" Below, in the mine, GMO lay there covered in blood, his breathing weak. It was obvious that he only had one breath left. Above his body, there was a hole in the air, and light shone in. It was a few hundred feet high. It was a heavenly road that was smashed out by his body. The purple-robed elder stood beside him, his eyes flashing coldly. He sized him up and said indifferently, "Let him wake up first." Then he left with a flick of his sleeves. With his eyesight, he could almost count the few strands of hair on Jimo's head clearly. He could already tell that this guy in front of him was already hanging by a thread between life and death. Or rather, he could totally be counted as a living dead. If this was a ruse, this level was a little too much. "Elder Master, today's matter is really strange," another yellow-robed man said. The purple-robed elder said indifferently, "It's just 2 people fighting over a treasure. Since ancient times, wealth has moved people's hearts. Of course, we must be cautious in everything, but we must not be overly jittery and treat everyone as an enemy." "Yes." The supreme martial artists behind lowered their heads and answered. The purple-robed elder said, "Have there been any unusual movements recently?" Check if there are any new news from the informant. Also, check on the Chu clan's movements and confirm if this person is really a ruse. Also, wait for him to wake up. Ask him about his background. Yes. Don't worry, Elder Master. Don't worry too much about him. Just wake him up and ask about the whereabouts of that purple crystal Bible soul, then quickly send him on his way. Our side can't afford to delay any longer. Yes. This purple-robed elder was one of the two remaining elders of the Shao clan, the younger brother of the founder of the clan, Shao Qingyu, and the second of the tribulations back then, Shao Qinlei. This time, at the land of dragon and phoenix bringing prosperity. To actually be able to mobilize him personally, it was enough to show how much importance the Shao clan attached to this land of dragon and phoenix bringing prosperity. And Shao Qinlei was also one of the only 3 middle-grade supreme martial artists in the Shao clan. Although he was only an elementary-grade supreme martial artist, in this level Heaven's continent, he was enough to rank in the top 20. The words, "Purple crystal soul of the holy crystal," that GMO shouted before he fainted were too powerful. The soul of the purple crystal was already a legendary item in the level Heaven's continent. Even with the Shao clan's 10,000 years of accumulation, they only had one soul of the purple crystal. And that soul of the purple crystal was still in the purple crystal mine. It wasn't taken out. Everyone knew. The reason why the purple crystal mine existed was because of the soul of the purple crystal. With the constant nourishment of the soul of the purple crystals could be produced continuously. It took hundreds of thousands of years of nourishment for a single purple crystal mine to appear. But if the soul of the purple crystal was taken away, the entire purple crystal mine would immediately become rootless. Therefore, the importance of the soul of the purple crystal was practically unparalleled. Moreover, it was GMO who shouted it. It was the purple crystal soul of the holy crystal? It was obviously of a higher level. To a super clan like the Shao clan, the temptation of this was practically unparalleled. Even if GMO was short-sighted and the so-called purple crystal soul of the holy crystal was actually just a soul of the purple crystal, the Shao clan would still protect him first. And if they got it, they definitely wouldn't be disappointed. GMO woke up and wanted to sit up. But he groaned in pain and lay down again. He murmured, "Am I not dead?" Beside him, a cold voice said, "All the bones in your body are broken. You'd better behave and not move." GMO asked weakly, "Who are you? Did you save me?" That person said coldly, "If we didn't save you, could there be anyone else?" A face appeared above GMO's head. GMO took a look. What a long horse face. If this person's face was placed on a horse's head, no one would feel the slightest bit conflicted. It was really too vivid. Not only was the face long, but that nose, those eyes, those eyebrows, that mouth, that chin. Second Master Ji was stunned on the spot. What the fuck? A horse is talking to me. Is this hell and I'm already dead? The horse-faced man's face darkened at once. Around him, uncontrollable laughter could be heard. The horse-faced man snorted angrily. He waved his hand and said, "Fuck you guys, ask him." He turned and left. After everyone's explanation, GMO finally believed that he had been saved. He immediately thanked them profusely and struggled to get up to thank them. But the moment he moved, he felt a sharp pain. His eyes rolled back and he fainted again. The Shao clan members looked at each other. After a long time, Second Master Ji finally woke up again. He was in so much pain that he couldn't speak. The Shao clan members had no choice but to treat him again. That was barely enough. "I'm a person with a hard life." Second Master Ji began to tell his story. In the story, he was the successor of a reclusive clan. His surname was Jiang, and his name was Jiang Yi. The reclusive clan was extremely powerful, but it attracted covetous eyes. Thus, he was implicated as a spy, and it was that person just now. Then, he found out that the Jiang clan's rise was entirely due to a piece of purple crystal soul of the holy crystal that contained ancient secrets. A certain mysterious force destroyed the Jiang clan overnight. He escaped with his life and fled all the way here. Chapter 1400. Second Master Ji was undoubtedly an expert storyteller. Smart child remembers the world, super fast hands. This was tempered by his countless lies and glib tongue. When this entire story was told by him, it was simply a story of blood and tears in the pugilistic world. Everyone who heard this story would never doubt the authenticity of it. Especially when Second Master Ji was crying as he spoke. That kind of speechlessness, that kind of grief and anger, that kind of despair, was really portrayed to the bone. The process was even more moving and could only be described in detail. How honest and strong his own family was, how inexperienced they were, how they were deceived, how they were negligent, how they were careless, how they were plotted against by the enemy, how despicable the enemy was, how meticulous their plan was, how strong they were, what tricks they used, who was their brains, who was their number one expert, how vicious and ungrateful they were, how the family met with trouble, how the fire broke out, how many loyal experts sacrificed to cover his escape, how they were killed, how they fought without hesitation, how they were heroic. As he spoke, GMO was so moved that tears fell from his eyes. The 7 or 8 experts of the Shao clan who were listening by the side also sighed. Some of them even had red eyes. My poor flying spirit beast! GMO looked up to the sky and sighed. He thumped his chest and stamped his feet in grief. That was such a precious, obedient, adorable, beautiful, and loyal 10th grade spirit beast. That snow eagle! That snow eagle! That snow eagle! That snow eagle! That snow eagle had self-detonated in the sky and died. That was the only reason I had enough time to escape, my snowflake eagle, ah! My snowflake eagle, ah! When it was about to die, it looked at me with that expression. Although it was only a spirit beast, I completely understood its meaning. It wanted me to live on no matter what. GMO bawled loudly, his heart broken. The experts of the Shao clan. From being cold and impatient at the start, to being attracted later on. Then, they gradually immersed themselves in this story step by step, their eyes brimming with tears. They imagined a scene in their minds. A snowflake eagle was being chased by countless enemies, and it was already riddled with injuries. It resolutely threw its master far away, then turned its head to look at its master affectionately, and charged towards the enemies without hesitation. With an earth-shattering explosion, it became an eternal legend in the sky. Become the loyal soul of the universe. Everyone sighed deeply. Such a spiritual bird, it was a rare sight. In the end, only one bastard managed to catch up with the enemy. That bastard was that ungrateful bastard. This person's surname was Luan, and he was ranked 2nd. I have always called him Luan Lauer. This damned Luan Lauer, he has been chasing us relentlessly, trying to kill us all. If you hadn't saved me, I wouldn't have survived. I, Jiang Yi, will not be able to escape this calamity. My Jiang clan's blood feud is as deep as the ocean, my snowflake eagle. Jimo's eyes were brimming with tears. He looked at everyone with deep affection and gratitude. Thank you so much. You are all good people. You are all very good people. The experts of the Shao clan felt somewhat ashamed. We are good people. We were just waiting to dig out your secret, and then we would slaughter you like a pig. Now, to actually be crowned with such a lofty honor of being a great good person, he was really ashamed to accept it. To think that I, Jian Yi, can also be considered a genius of my generation. Second Master Ji boasted. His face was full of pain. All the meridians in my body had already been opened by the purple crystal soul of Holy Crystal when I was a baby. I was already a martial venerable when I was 3, an emperor level when I was 10, and a martial saint when I was 15. Now I am already a peak 2nd grade supreme martial artist at 21. What a pity! The heavens don't wait for years. They actually allowed me to encounter such a disaster while I was advancing by leaps and bounds. All the bones in my body are already broken. Second Master Ji looked up to the sky and howled in grief and indignation. How can I take revenge for those blood feuds? These words made the people of the Shao clan shudder involuntarily. Excitedly. close to the peak. That purple crystal soul of holy crystal actually had such an effect? All the meridians opened when he was a baby, and he reached peak second-grade supreme martial artist at 21? With a whoosh, Xiao Chunlei appeared at the side and asked calmly, Jiang Yi, let me ask you, what exactly is that purple crystal soul of holy crystal? What is its function? Everyone's ears perked up. Xiao Chunlei called him Jiang Yi, but it sounded like he was calling him Chief Jiang. However, no one paid attention to it at all. GMO said hoarsely, that purple crystal soul of holy crystal. Legend has it that it was the core of a huge purple crystal mine in ancient times. Countless souls of purple crystal can be derived from this purple crystal soul of holy crystal. Countless souls of purple crystal can be derived. Everyone gasped, their eyes filled with eagerness at once. Apart from the fact that the soul of purple crystal can assist in cultivation, as long as this purple crystal soul of holy crystal is placed in one's dantian for a day and guided by cultivation techniques, it can improve one's aptitude and open up all the meridians in one's body. Thus, there will be no more obstacles or bottlenecks in one's path of martial arts, and there won't be any inner demons. There was a series of gasps. The supreme martial artists of the Shao clan had practically sucked the entire place into a vacuum zone. Open up all the meridians in one's body. Without any obstacles or bottlenecks. Without any inner demons. What the heck? This was practically one of the legendary divine pills that could send one to the heavens. Oh my god, Xiao Chunlei's eyes narrowed. Is there really such a thing? He reached out and placed his hand on Jimo's wrist, circulating his energy to check. At once, he discovered that although this person was seriously injured and his meridians were blocked, it was all because of his injuries. The meridians all over his body were indeed unobstructed. He couldn't help but ponder. After a long while, he asked dispassionately, where is this purple crystal soul of holy crystal now? Everyone's expression became anxious at once. All of them looked at this, Jiang Yi, with burning eyes, holding their breaths as they waited for his answer. With this question, GMO fell silent. After a long while, he said hoarsely, although I don't know your identities, all of you have saved my life, which is already worthy of me offering up the purple crystal soul of holy crystal with both hands. It's a pity that the enemy is really too powerful. If all of you had gotten the purple crystal soul of holy crystal, I'm afraid you'd be asking for trouble. The corners of Xiao Chunlei's mouth curved. He said dispassionately, you don't have to worry about this. You just have to tell us where the purple crystal soul of holy crystal is. With difficulty, GMO said, all right. Anyway, I have no hope of revenge, so I'll fulfill all of your wishes and repay all of you for saving my life. Xiao Chunlei saw that he was so understanding. He couldn't help but let out a rare smile. That purple crystal soul of holy crystal is hidden in my clan's secret ground. In the 100,000 mountains. As long as it's a direct descendant of my clan, when their limbs are healthy and full of vitality, they will be able to touch it. Once they cut their wrists and smear their blood essence on it, the secret ground will automatically sense it. When it opens, they will be able to see the purple crystal soul of holy crystal. Second Master Ji had used Ao Shiyan's dragon bloodline as a reference to open the secret ground. It was flawless. Xiao Chunlei's eyes flashed. In that case, outsiders can't open it at all. GMO smiled sadly. Otherwise, why would my clan be persecuted like this? And why would they be so eager to hunt me down? Xiao Chunlei nodded. He somewhat believed this statement. He had seen a lot. Naturally, he knew all the mysterious existences. They couldn't be judged by common sense. And this method of opening the secret ground that required the direct descendants' bloodline was the one and only way for the powerful clans and clans of the Heavens continent to maintain their power for generations. Even the Shao clan had such a secret ground. And that was naturally the supreme secret of the Shao clan, the life-threatening injury that was absolutely true, the terrifying hunt, the fierce sword that split the mountain. The story was flawless. That extremely desperate and sorrowful expression, the display of true feelings, and that sincere and honest expression of Second Master Ji at this moment that even he was touched by it, and that genuine feeling of gratitude, it formed a vicious lie that one had no choice but to believe. Xiao Chunlei nodded and turned to leave. Before he left, he instructed, one must always be wary of others. Everyone who heard at once must think of a way to make this little guy repeat it a second and third time. In this way, use it for comparison, to make sure there's no mistake. In case there's anything suspicious, control your greed immediately and kill him. If there's nothing suspicious, treat his injuries immediately. At the very least, restore his mobility first, or at least to the point where he can move. Don't be like now where his bones are broken and he doesn't even dare to move. Then move to the camp as soon as possible. After all, this was a mine. Firstly, it wasn't a place for treatment. Secondly, this place had become a huge trap. An impending killing scene. This Jian Ye's body was involved with such an important thing, it was really not suitable for him to stay here. When his injuries recovered a little, he would send someone to follow him to retrieve the purple crystal and soul of the holy crystal. Ji Mo's injuries naturally wouldn't recover so easily. As he treated him, he started to get close to him, calling him senior, calling him benefactor, and saying that he would repay him with all his might. Second Master Ji's little mouth was the embodiment of honey at this moment. The supreme martial artists of the Shao clan sensitively felt that the elder master seemed to have some appreciation for talent, so they were much more polite to him. After all, even if he didn't appreciate talent, he still needed to use this little guy's bloodline to open the treasure. There should be no harm in chatting for a while. For a moment, everyone introduced themselves with the same name and became friendly. People kept coming in and asking GMO questions. GMO kept repeating the same thing over and over again. There was no flaw in his story. Everyone believed him without a doubt. Moreover, they all sighed endlessly. During this period, GMO was also counting. There were really quite a number of experts here. It looked like the Shao clan had really broken through. In total, there were close to 30 supreme martial artists who had come in, and there were 17 to 18 supreme martial artists of 4th or 5th grade and above. Such strength was really shocking and terrifying. After getting familiar with them, Second Master Ji finally spoke unintentionally. Strange, why are all of you here? I don't remember the Shao clan being in this place. That supreme martial artist Horseface smiled. During this period of time, this person who GMO had offended the moment he woke up was the one who chatted with GMO the most, and was also the closest. He said, "We naturally have an important mission here." What mission is so important? GMO's eyes lit up. Chapter 1401. Mission. Of course it's a very important mission. Horseface was in a difficult position. Furthermore, once your body recovers a little, you'll have to move immediately. This place will become very dangerous. Very dangerous? You want me to move? That won't do. If something happens to all of you, can I still live? GMO spoke eloquently about the matter of moving him. All of you are my saviors. Of course I have to live and die with all of you. All of you are the people closest to me. How can I drag out an ignoble existence when all of you are in danger? Then wouldn't I be worse than a beast? If I don't do something for all of you, I won't be at ease even if I die. Please let me do something for all of you. Even if I can't do anything, I'll feel comfortable accompanying all of you. In the face of such a sincere request, what could the Shao clan say? And so, Second Master Ji stayed in the mining area? And all the way until late at night the news came. Chu Yang and the rest of the Chu clan had left the Chu clan in the afternoon and were heading here. Xiao Chunlei pondered for a while. He had also wondered if this Jian Yi could be a spy from the Chu clan. But the divergence in time dispelled a little of his doubts once again. And at this time, with the help of the Shao clan's divine medicine, GMO could already move around a little. Of course, it was still completely impossible for him to walk on the ground, but it didn't delay chatting at all. So now, GMO already knew what position each supreme martial artist was in charge of. Benefactor. Where are you? Why do I feel like I haven't seen you for a long time, benefactor? Is your position dangerous? Sigh, what a pity that my heart armor has been destroyed. Big brother. You are my biological big brother. Boo-hoo, I'm so grateful that you came to heal me again. Where are you? Can't you accompany me for a while more? Are you that busy, Elder Shao? I really can't believe it. You are already 10,000 years old. This is really a miracle. Oh my God! I've finally met a living God today. Ah, Elder Shao. Why don't I see you? Third brother Shao, oh, it's really tough. Come. Let's chat, I'll relieve you of your tiredness. Why? Why don't you chat with me? How did I offend you? I'll change. Second Master Ji's tone was sincere and his expression was pure. Moreover, if others ignored him, he would pester them, for example. Did I offend you? Please be magnanimous and don't be angry with me. I'm still young and don't know what I'm talking about. Why don't you chat with me? I'm so lonely. Whenever I'm lonely, I'm reminded of my blood feud. Instantly, I feel like I have nothing left to live for. Thank you. Thank you for chatting with me. What should we talk about? Haha, seventh brother Shao, why don't you tell me the story of this mine? Ha! Secret? Seventh brother Shao, do you think I'm an idiot? Haha. This mine is obviously a purple crystal mine. Although I'm not that talented, I'm still very interested in a mere purple crystal mine. Oh. I see. Dragon and Phoenix? You're not bluffing, are you? This is impossible. How can there be dragons and phoenixes in this world? What a joke, fuck. This was actually real? Oh my God! I've misunderstood you. I deserve to die 1,000 times for my sins. Even if I die 1,000 times, I won't be able to atone for my sins. I'll repent. Is there a need for that? I don't think it matters. What Chu clan can be so powerful? Are they more powerful than all of you? I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. I won't believe it even if I die. Ah? So they're really powerful? Yeah. I want to live and die together with you. I want to live and die together with you. We hate being born on the same day, month, and year. But if there's really danger, we brothers will die on the same day, month, and year. I, Jiangyi, won't have lived in vain. Although the supreme martial artists of the Shao clan enjoyed his flattery, they were also somewhat depressed. After cultivating for so many years and becoming supreme martial artists, who would like to talk so much? But they didn't expect that this little one they saved was actually a super chatterbox. The most speechless thing about his little mouth was that even when there was no one around him, he could still curse at the air or mumble to himself. If a worm crawled past him, he would cry, "Worm, I really envy you. You're so carefree. How would you know my pain?" Everyone was really convinced, damn it, after living for so many years, I only know what a weirdo is today. I dare to bet that if this little one died, that tongue of his would definitely be the last part to stiffen. After being tempered so many times, this tongue had already become a spirit. It was really too much exercise. Little did they know that in this glib tongue, Second Master Ji had already figured out the ins and outs of this place. Evening finally arrived. As the night descended, Chu Yang, Mo Tianji, and the rest also silently entered the Aspen Valley. Once they entered this area, Mo Tianji immediately gave the order for the brothers to split up and use their own methods to infiltrate the Aspen Valley. They gathered in front of the mine. The enemy must have set up an inescapable trap in the mine. As long as Elder Yu doesn't attack, we definitely won't be their match. So, in this battle, firstly, we need to snatch the treasure and secondly, we need to train our troops. It's obviously very difficult. So, we need to gather our troops and attack one place first. And now, we're splitting up for the upcoming battle. We definitely won't attack the mine rashly and fall into a trap. But we need to create traces there. We must attract all their forces here. Then, we'll attack their main camp and cut off their supplies. Let them become rootless water. This time, we'll split up. Everyone must write down their methods to me completely after the battle, including their mentality at that time. Compared to snatching the treasure and the seventh fragment of the Calamity Sword, Mo Tianji obviously paid more attention to the methods of the brothers at this level. Although we're gathered together now, we may not be together forever. There will definitely be many times when we have to fight for ourselves. Our methods are very important. Facing the enemy this time will be the beginning of my training. So, everyone must complete it independently. Mo Tianji said solemnly. Chu Yang agreed wholeheartedly with this decision. The seven brothers, Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei, immediately split up. Under the cover of the night, they silently disappeared into the bushes of Aspen Valley, Mo Qingwu. This time, she was also acting alone. The little girl was obviously a little scared. But Mo Tianji and Chu Yang hardened their hearts at the same time and ignored Mo Qingwu's pitiful gaze. The little girl pouted and went to carry out her mission, feeling wronged, leaving behind two men who sighed deeply. You don't have to persuade me. I understand. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji said this at the same time. They opened and closed their mouths at the same time. The same conflicted expression of deep sighs. The same gesture of waving their hands. My sister needs training to adapt to the martial world. I understand this, but who do you think you are? Mo Tianji was a little unhappy. Chu Yang said earnestly, Brother-in-law, there's something I have to remind you. Your sister is my wife. Do you know what the word wife means? You're like an old hen protecting its food every day. Interesting. It's true that she's your biological sister, but how long can you accompany her? Minister Chu said proudly. But my wife has to accompany me for thousands of years. You're just an elder brother. What nonsense are you? You're actually jealous every day for no reason. Are you a pain in the ass? Mo Tianji glared at him. You. What about me? Chu Yang had the upper hand and immediately counterattacked. I can take over your role as an elder brother. But can you take over the role of my husband? You're going against me and being jealous of me. Can you take it? Mo Tianji covered his face and left. Sword Master Chu let out a long breath and exhaled. Fuck, this time, it was an overwhelming advantage. It's really too satisfying. He had never felt so good in a battle with Mo Tianji. His body flashed and he disappeared into the bushes. Dong Wushang took the lead. His burly body used the cover of the night to choose a method that was almost open and above board. As for the concealment that Mo Tianji mentioned, Dong Wushang also wanted to do it. But he really couldn't do it. He might as well charge over in a semi-open manner. Furthermore, the more he charged, the more confident he became and the more above board he became. It was like a gust of wind blowing across the ground. On Dong Wushang's right, not far away, was naturally Mo Lair. The black demon young master's entire body seemed to have merged into the darkness, flowing along with the night fog. Ever since she met Mo Tianji and Mo Tianji passed the old black demon's secret manual to her, Mo Lair had inherited this secret manual. With the help of her supreme martial artist cultivation, she naturally learned it immediately. It was like adding wings to a tiger. Ao Xian, on the other hand, was like a wriggling snake, silently slithering through the bushes. Everywhere he passed, there was no sound. Even the tender grass was not damaged at all. It was the dragon-shaped technique. The secret technique of the dragon clan. On the other hand, Rui Budong's body was like a large bird, flying freely in the dense forest without his feet touching the ground. His black robe fluttered in the wind. Even if one were to see him face to face, one would only think that this was a large bird and not a person. The Phoenix clan's free and unfettered travel technique. Luo Kudi, on the other hand, strictly followed the art of concealment, as he moved forward meticulously. His every move was as standard as a textbook. Xie Danqiong's body spun forward. Although he spun quickly, there was no sound at all. His body turned into a blurry whirlwind as he spun. In such a state, not only could he conceal himself perfectly, he could also use his viburnum flowers to attack. It could be said that he could attack and defend at the same time. Amo Tianji's white robe fluttered, perfectly blending with the moonlight that occasionally seeped into the forest. It was like a piece of bright moonlight, moving gracefully. No one could see where Chujiang was. But Amo Tianji could guess that in the forest, where the red flowers were blooming, Chu Yang would definitely be at the side. Because that was Mo Qingwu moving forward. Mo Qingwu was dressed in red. Wherever she passed, it was as if the grass was blooming with red flowers. But it definitely did not make people feel that it was out of place. In a field of green, the red flowers danced, just like the most exquisite dance in the world, soaring between heaven and earth. Attack from 8 directions. Target, Purple Crystal Mine. Yesterday, I drank until I passed out. Brothers, having a father-in-law who is known as the Wine Immortal is really not a man's day. As soon as I left, I already said that if you drink a cup, I'll drink half a cup, okay? The old man said. Then you have to drink with me to my heart's content. I thought, even if I get drunk, I can still drink 2 cups. No matter how big the old man's alcohol tolerance is, 4 cups should be about half a liter. So I agreed readily. In the end, father-in-law drank 8 cups. When I got home last night, I couldn't get up no matter what. My legs were like 2 puddles of mud, I couldn't move. My wife tried to help me, but she couldn't. She carried me, but she couldn't. I heard that he called his younger cousin and carried me up. Today, I slept until the afternoon. I didn't even know that there was a guest at home. I only woke up at 3 in the afternoon. Only then did I know that I went crazy drunk at father-in-law's house last night. I slammed the table in front of him and said, "Motherfucker." I heard that we were arguing about the war of resistance against Japan. Father-in-law is indeed a retired soldier. He followed me and scolded me. That momentum was earth-shattering. Mother-in-law called today and said that the father and son's alcohol tolerance is bad. Don't drink anymore. I heard that after I left, the old man took a knife and insisted on fighting ghosts. What the hell? Chapter 1402. The Chu clan has confirmed that they are heading in this direction. They should be able to reach Aspen Valley by dawn. Everyone, take note and be on high alert. Double the manpower in the direction of the valley entrance, and keep a close watch. Check for traps. Supreme Martial Artist in position. Secret signal check. Everyone, send messages at any time. Prepare poison, poisonous smoke, and sleeping gas. Dragon bone incense in position. Smart child, remember the net, and quickly update the net, conceal all traces. In Aspen Valley, ever since they received news of the spy hidden in the Chu clan, orders were sent out one after another. They were on high alert and ready for battle. All these orders were clearly investigated by the extremely curious Second Master Ji. On the other side, Gu Duxing and Second Master Gu were flying toward the Purple Crystal Mine from high up in the sky at lightning speed. According to the original plan, Gu Duxing only needed to ask for time to start the operation immediately. He didn't have the slightest concern about whether his brothers were in position. The 2 first-grade supreme martial artists of the Shao clan who were on high alert in the sky above the mine stood back to back, one on the left and one on the right. They looked at both sides without the slightest bit of negligence, paying attention to everything that happened. Suddenly, a gust of wind rose from the east, as if there were thousands of soldiers and horses surging toward them with an extremely majestic aura. The 2 of them were alerted at the same time and turned to look toward the east. All they saw was a dense forest. All the trees suddenly fell toward the west neatly. Countless red flowers and green grass flew into the sky. The world was instantly filled with a fierce and domineering murderous aura. In front of such an aura, everyone felt that their existence was like a small blade of grass in front of a tsunami. They had no power to resist at all and could only choose to go with the flow and surrender. The 2 of them were stunned at the same time. They were actually stunned for a moment at the same time before they shouted at the same time. Be careful! Enemy attack! Their voices were sharp and pierced through the night sky. The entire purple crystal mine was originally dark and gloomy, and now it was still dark and gloomy. But there was a heavy murderous aura. But at this moment, it condensed and flew. At the same time, a sharp force suddenly came from the west. It was sharp and indestructible. Everywhere it passed, the trees in the mountains and valleys were instantly crushed into powder. Even the mountain rocks were instantly turned into flying ash. Along with this fierce aura, streaks of crisscrossing sword-chi were like streaks of lightning. It streaked across the sky. At the same time, an incomparably majestic and solemn sword cry suddenly resounded in the originally silent mining area. Clang! This sword chime was like thousands of horses and thousands of soldiers suddenly hearing the marshal's command. They responded at the same time, in unison. It was the swords of the several hundred experts of the Shao family who were lying in ambush. All of them unsheathed their swords at the same time, letting out a crisp and clear sword hum. This sword hum caused the faces of all the Shao family experts to change drastically. Sword Sovereign. A Sword Sovereign had participated in the sneak attack. Furthermore, their target was them. Only the Sword Sovereign could have such power. With this kind of ability, he was able to completely ignore the ambush of tens of millions of experts. With just a flash of his sword, he was able to completely destroy all the ambushes. The sword light had already answered for you. What was the use of lying in ambush? If you continued to wait in the same spot, you would really become the Sword Sovereign's target. All the sword experts cursed in their hearts at the same time. Fuck his grandmother. They had been lying in ambush for so long. After spending so much effort, who would have thought that there would be a Sword Sovereign among the enemies? Just one draw of his sword and it made Lao Bai busy. One by one, they appeared extremely depressed. With long swords in hand, they stared at the black-clothed figure in the clouds and night in the west. Only 100 or so saber experts were still lying in the same spot. As a surprise attack, a Sword Sovereign had already appeared. It was impossible for a Saber Sovereign to appear, right? That was too unreasonable. In the world, other than Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing, who were both Saber and Sword Sovereigns, it was possible for them to appear at the same time. They had never heard of the two Saber and Sword Sovereigns joining forces in this world. That was simply an impossible myth, a legend that could not be replicated. Therefore, the Saber experts were all calm and composed. Looking at the helpless and depressed faces of their sword-wielding colleagues, they could not help but gloat. You deserve it! You have a saber but you don't practice your sword. You've suffered, haven't you? As the saying goes, if you don't practice your superior sword, you practice your inferior sword. If you don't practice your golden sword, you practice your silver sword. You guys have the same name as your weapons, despicable. How good is it for us to practice our saber? How safe is it? We can hide here and no one can see us. We won't be alerted by a draw of a sword. It was at this moment that the majestic aura of thousands of soldiers and horses from the east suddenly grew stronger. With a whoosh, a hurricane visible to the naked eye suddenly formed. A burly and majestic figure suddenly appeared in midair. A majestic voice shouted openly, "Saber!" Suddenly, a gust of wind and clouds surged between heaven and earth. It was as if countless thunderbolts had exploded at this moment. The whole world surrendered. Echoes came from all directions. Saber, 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 saber. The echoes from all directions converged into one sentence like a bolt of lightning, one word. Saber! The sky shook along with the thunder. Clang! Hundreds of shiny steel sabers came out of their sheaths at the same time. Under the night sky and the moonlight, countless blurry saber light flashed. With a shout, all the supreme sabers came out of their sheaths. They popped out spontaneously with awe-inspiring power. But it also exposed all the saber experts who were lying in ambush. They were still gloating a moment ago, and then they suffered the same fate. This kind of encounter made everyone, whether they use sabers or swords, have a feeling in their hearts. Things in this world are really fucking wonderful. Xiao Chunlei was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. Another saber supremacy. Today was really an unlucky day. Xiao Qinlei had always had a nickname, Saber and Sword Supremacy. He carried a sword and a saber with him all year round. This time, he was guarding the Aspen Valley in the southeast, so he naturally had to bring his own saber and sword. As a mid-level supreme martial artist, what else could he be afraid of? As long as Moon Breeze didn't come, he was invincible in this area. And the possibility of Moon Breeze personally making a move was infinitely close to zero. So Xiao Qinlei had always been full of confidence. And according to the intelligence, although the people sent by the Chu clan had good cultivation, but they weren't in his eyes. And they didn't specifically point out that there was a saber sword supremacy among them. One must know that an existence like the saber sword supremacy was worth the detailed information of every spy. Since there wasn't, then he didn't exist. So Xiao Qinlei didn't take any precautions. In the whole 100,000 years of the heavenly layer, how many saber sword supremacies had appeared? How could they appear here so coincidentally among a group of juniors? It was with such a mentality that a sword light flashed, and the sword supremacy appeared for the first time. The sword at the waist of Xiao Qinlei, the mid-level supreme martial artist, was the first to react. With a clang, Xiao Qinlei, the mid-level supreme martial artist who was guarding the formation, was exposed. Xiao Qinlei was so angry that his white hair fluttered, and he stepped out. Standing on a high place, his hawk-like eyes looked around. At this moment, the wind and clouds suddenly surged. Before the sword supremacy's remaining power subsided, the saber supremacy attacked aggressively. It was yet another alarm that caught them off guard. So the long saber at Xiao Qinlei's waist popped out spontaneously, under the watchful eyes of everyone. Xiao Qinlei stood on a high place. First, the sword came out. Then, with a face full of anger, the saber also popped out. At this moment, Xiao Qinlei felt like he was a prostitute standing on a high platform for people to exhibit. An indescribable stupidity. Wasn't it enough to mess with you once? You actually had to stand on a high place and strike a cool pose like an idiot, waiting for others to mess with you a second time? What kind of naturally handicapped brain did you have? Xiao Qinlei didn't have time to be angry. Because in the sky, under the night sky, the saber sword supremacy had already launched an attack at the same time. The sword was in the west. The sword of the black swordsman in black robes came from the west. Eyes like a sword, body like a sword, mind like a sword, hand like a sword. At this moment, the vast mountains were already gone. Anyone who saw this sword would have the same feeling in their heart. In front of this sword, all things in the world can be forgotten. Happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy are not in the heart. Sword of oblivion. In the world, only this stunning sword was left. The sword energy was everywhere, filling the universe. Sovereign's Descent was the supreme martial artist's sword technique. Gu Duxing let out a long howl. A black dragon like a swimming dragon slashed down violently like thunder and lightning. Oblivion martial world, oblivion sword, solitary across the world, solitary move. On the other side, Dong Wushang laughed wildly. His body suddenly flashed and appeared in the air. With the black saber in his hand, his majestic body stood in midair. It was as if an insurmountable mountain had suddenly appeared out of thin air. Sentient heavenly Tao, I have sentiments. Wushang's saber knows that I won't be hurt. With the black saber raised, Dong Wushang stood still in midair. His legs were straight, and his black hair flew up. And at this moment, the black saber came slashing down violently. This saber seemed to want to cut through the heavens. Gu Duxing's sword energy was everywhere, but Dong Wushang only used one saber move. The saber light was like a waterfall, zigzagging down from midair and slashing toward the top of Xiao Qinlei's head. Thousands of supreme martial artist sword energy also gathered from all directions, converging into a huge light blade and slashing at Xiao Qinlei. Sword supremacy Gu Duxing and saber supremacy Dong Wushang attacked at the same time at this moment. And they chose the same opponent at the same time, the most powerful second-grade supreme martial artist, Xiao Qinlei. Obviously, Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing wanted to test the power of a second-grade supreme martial artist. Therefore, this saber and sword move was imperative. The gap between them would also be made clear to the two at this moment. Although this move was slightly different from Mo Tianji's original intention of arrangement, Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang made the same choice without any discussion or communication at all. This was the choice of the heart of the strong. As long as there are strong people here, then I will never attack those who are slightly weaker. This was the pride and reserve in their bones. Xiao Qinlei roared. His beard and halberd spread out, and his saber and sword were unsheathed at the same time. As a master of both saber and sword, Xiao Qinlei naturally had his own pride. The dignity of a second-grade supreme martial artist was not to be blasphemed. Therefore, he didn't hesitate at all. His long sword flew through the air, meeting Gu Duxing's immortal-like sword attack. The saber light suddenly rose up and actually blocked Dong Wushang's lightning-like saber. Chapter 1403. There was a ferocious smile on Xiao Qinlei's face, but there was also a confident smile. Smart kids remember Network's super-fast hands a saber and a sword attacked at the same time. Even though he was facing a sword supremacy and a saber supremacy, he still had absolute confidence that he could defeat both saber and sword supremacies in one fell swoop. Moreover, he wanted to use his unparalleled cultivation to severely injure both saber and sword supremacies at the same time. He wanted to use the most violent and barbaric way to defeat the enemy's best attack. This was the only way to defeat the enemy's fighting spirit. He wanted to plant a thought in the enemy's heart that you can never defeat me. Such a thought. As long as this saber and sword collided according to his expectations, then these two saber and sword supremacies would be crippled by him. The inner demons left behind by a frontal attack were far more harmful than any other inner demons. As long as these two were completely defeated by him, then there was more than a 10% chance that they would never be able to recover from this setback. Xiao Qinlei was even prepared for the follow-up divine consciousness attack and aura attack. The next moment, the saber light was like lightning, and the sword aura was like a rainbow. They approached at the same time. The two sword auras collided first, triggering a bright light in the air, scattering and shooting in all directions. Gu Duxing let out a muffled grunt. The sound of the saber whistled. Dong Wushang's saber slashed down with the force of a thunderbolt, but with a kind of naturally domineering aura. The two sabers collided violently without any tricks. Xiao Qinlei let out a muffled grunt. Dong Wushang let out a loud roar, and his dark saber slashed down continuously. Like continuous flashes of lightning in the air. The rumbling sounds were endless. Xiao Qinlei's tyrannical recall force also burst forth at this moment. Boom! With a loud roar, Gu Duxing's body pierced through the air like a sharp sword. With a sway, he disappeared without a trace. Dong Wushang's burly body retreated rapidly in the air. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His body turned into a small black dot as he retreated, and then disappeared. There was only a sigh of admiration left. Second-grade supreme martial artist, you really live up to your reputation. Xiao Qinlei stood stiffly on the high platform. His expression was heavy, his gaze deep, and his long beard rustled. He actually didn't pursue the rocky ground under his feet. It slowly began to collapse, but it was shattered into powder by the saber light and sword energy, and slowly sank down 30 feet. Xiao Qinlei stood in the void just like that. Even with his cultivation as a mid-stage supreme martial artist, he was actually unable to protect the ground beneath his feet while taking on the opponent's saber and sword head-on. Everything caused by the remaining power was shattered. A layer of sweat broke out on Xiao Qinlei's back. There was still a lingering fear. Originally, he was trying his best to establish his prestige. Although he was being forced to deal with it, with his cultivation, this was nothing. Therefore, he had originally planned to completely shatter his opponent's attack with one strike, then immediately counterattack and destroy these two sword and saber geniuses who had delivered themselves to his doorstep. Even if it couldn't destroy life. He also wanted to destroy his self-confidence and self-respect. But now he found out. The one who was shocked was him. It was an extremely ferocious sword. The strike was so domineering that it left a deep impression on Xiao Qinlei. He could clearly feel that if the other party's cultivation could be a little deeper, if the other party could be on par with him, or even not on par with him, even if the other party was a few levels lower than him, at the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist or a 7th grade supreme martial artist at the pinnacle, then at this moment, he was definitely a pile of mincemeat. He was cut in half by a sword or a saber. That was a sure thing. The other party's aura didn't weaken at all. Even if he retreated with one move, that murderous aura was also rising steadily. There was a kind of feeling of complacency and complacency. Instead, it was him who was shocked and scared. Was this really just a 5th grade sword supremacy? 5th grade saber supremacy? Thinking of that horrifying aura just now, Xiao Qinlei was still scared. He was really too arrogant, if it wasn't for his 10,000 years of cultivation. Xiao Qinlei stopped himself from thinking further. Lifting up the saber and sword, looking at the obvious gap that was cut out, he was speechless for a moment. Gu Duxing struck with his sword and felt a majestic force coming at him head-on. At the same time that the sword light was released, it was rebounded. That feeling was like a light boat in the boiling sea, facing a huge wave head-on. Gu Duxing dealt with it with all his might, gathering all his cultivation and fighting with all his might. After one strike, Gu Duxing's face was pale and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. His wrist shook violently, and he borrowed the force to escape. My current cultivation, compared to a 2nd grade supreme martial artist, is still insignificant. The gap is too big. In this strike, the feeling of death and the aura of a 2nd grade supreme martial artist as vast as the sea also made Gu Duxing understand a lot in an instant. So he retreated immediately without any reluctance. It was like a top assassin using his best skills to assassinate the enemy, but as long as the strike didn't work, he would retreat immediately. Only when he was thousands of feet away and in a safe range did he feel as if his whole body had been struck by lightning, and he felt a numbing pain all over. Looking up, dust and smoke filled the sky at the place where they exchanged blows. One day, I will reach this level. And that day is definitely not too far away, Gu Duxing said to himself silently in his heart. His internal organs were shaken, his qi and blood were boiling as if they were about to burst out of his body, and his heart meridians were almost broken. But his expression was calm and even a little happy. He took out an incomplete version of the heavy elixir and swallowed it, his eyes shining. A 2nd grade supreme martial artist was not unkillable. Dong Wushang waved his dark saber and slashed down like a hurricane. After one strike, his whole body shook violently and he flew out with the force of the impact without any resistance. His strength is even greater than mine. I can't kill him, I'm not his match. The distance between me and this person is still very far away. However, I could already feel what he was feeling at this point. I'm already clear. So I will definitely reach it. So I'll retreat for the time being. This feeling was very similar to when one was at a low level, looking at the peak of a mountain. It was like heaven on earth, completely unattainable. But when one climbed to a certain level and looked at the original position, one would see clouds and mist, and a stone mountain. Although it was still far away, it was already not unattainable. Dong Wushang was shaken violently and flew out. His meridians were about to break. All the blood in his body flowed backward almost instantly. But he didn't panic at all. He swallowed an incomplete version of the heavy elixir in midair, and fled far away without looking back. I'm not his match today. But one day, even if I face a 2nd grade supreme martial artist alone, I will be able to kill him with one strike. Because I've already seen your level clearly. Xiao Qinlei stood in the air for a long time with a heavy expression. After a long time, he sighed and was about to drift down. But right at this moment, a clear voice said, "Kill this 2nd grade supreme martial artist, and that dragon bone and phoenix might will be in our hands. Today, I swear to attack with my life, I must get it." Xiao Qinlei was furious. Who was so arrogant? He turned to look, only to see that in the forest far away, a white-clothed figure stood in the wind, like the moonlight shining in the forest. This was an order. It came from his mouth. Xiao Qinlei was so angry that he laughed. "Junior! You're courting death!" His arms shook. His whole person flew in the air like a great rock spreading its wings. He pounced on that figure in white, covering the distance of 10,000 feet in an instant. As the figure in white floated, it was already obvious that it was a young man in white, with a gentle face, handsome and graceful, looking at him with a calm gaze, without sorrow, joy, surprise and fear. Facing a second-grade supreme martial artist who was about to come, his expression didn't change at all. Xiao Qinlei's eyes were like an eagle's. He opened his hands, and a big hand appeared out of thin air, grabbing fiercely. All of a sudden, there was a slight vibration in the air. Then, Xiao Qinlei discovered to his astonishment that a huge, bright, and gorgeous flower had suddenly appeared in front of him. An extremely beautiful and dreamy flower slowly bloomed in front of him. Xiao Qinlei could even clearly see those gorgeous petals slowly unfurling in front of him, unfurling endlessly. It was like a lotus flower, blooming continuously, but the stamen that should have been exposed was nowhere to be seen. A fierce aura came down from above. Xiao Qinlei's thunderous eyes suddenly closed, and he slashed out with his sword. This was the most important trick to facing the viburnum flower. Close your eyes and don't look at the brilliance, but use your mind to sense the murderous intent and deal with the enemy. Xie Danqiong's eyes lit up. He already knew that his viburnum flower could affect the vision of even a second-grade supreme martial artist. This was enough. At the same time, a sword light like a furious dragon slashed out, and a clear roar sounded like a phoenix soaring in the sky. Xiao Qinlei, who had closed his eyes, suddenly felt as if a dragon and a phoenix had appeared in front of him, and they were joining forces to attack him. With a boom, the viburnum flower was dispersed by a single blow. Xie Danqiong had a satisfied smile on his face, and he fell down with blood at the corner of his mouth. On Xiao Qinlei's body, traces of being cut by the viburnum flower appeared again. Xiao Qinlei opened his eyes abruptly. He punched Ao Xian violently, and slashed Rui Budong swiftly with his saber. He didn't even have time to say anything. Ao Xian let out a dragon roar and retreated madly with a somersault. Rui Budong laughed and immediately retreated after that attack. Xiao Qinlei stood in the air majestically. When he looked around, the young man in white just now had already disappeared. He shouted, "Scoundrel! Come out and fight with me!" Thinking of the murderous intent of the blooming flower just now, he almost lost himself in it. That roar like a divine dragon, that oppressive aura like a phoenix. Xiao Qinlei felt one thing with infinite urgency. If these enemies were not eliminated, they would be harmed sooner or later. These few small fries must not be left alive. There had never been a day when he had such an absurd feeling of being prepared for a rainy day. Moreover, the elder master of the Xiao clan had also never thought that this kind of mentality of being jealous of the talented would actually appear in him one day. Before this, no matter what kind of genius he saw, he would only smile and even look forward to the day when this genius would grow up. But today, he was afraid. A voice said, "If I want to come out, I'll come out. If I don't want to, I won't come out. But I'm not some scoundrel. You old turtle, apologize to me." Xiao Qinlei shouted angrily. "If you're not a scoundrel, can you still be considered open and above board?" That voice howled like a wolf and rose up in rage. "A woo damn old turtle, you've made Second Master Luo angry." A ray of sword light rose from the ground like a ferocious wolf foraging alone on the grassland. At the same time, another ray of sword light seemed to appear from the netherworld. Two rays of sword light, one from the left and one from the right, shot over at lightning speed. The one on the left was ferocious and wild, like a pack of wolves devouring. The one on the right, however, seemed to carry the murderous aura of heaven and earth, as well as a kind of resolute aura of slaughtering the whole world without stopping. It was Sword Master Chu who had made his move. What harm was there in slaughtering the whole world? Late update, sorry. The main thing is that after I finished writing a chapter, I realized that something was wrong, so I wrote a new chapter. It's really embarrassing. In the previous chapter, I wrote the comparison of strength wrongly. Chapter 1404. Xiao Chunlei was a little sad. Smart kids remember Network's super fast hands. The first big shock was that he didn't expect the other party to have two saber and sword supremes with such powerful strength. His spirit was dampened at the first attack. After the first wave, the other party's words easily hit the thing he cared about the most and aroused his anger. Then came the blooming of the viburnum flowers, which made him break out in cold sweat. When the cool wind blew, he suddenly felt cold all over. His clothes were completely torn by the viburnum flowers, and he could clearly feel the sharp viburnum flowers cutting across his skin. It was as if he was being dismembered. Just as this feeling arose, he was attacked by the combined power of the dragon and the phoenix. The blow to his spiritual sea was really unparalleled. If it was any other time before this, he wouldn't feel like this. But now, he had been exerting his strength beside the dragon and phoenix skeletons for days. That kind of overwhelming pressure had almost penetrated deep into his bones. Now, outside the dragon and phoenix skeletons, there were actually two living dragon and phoenix powers attacking him. At that moment, Xiao Chunlei's soul almost left his body, and his mind was almost in a mess. Could it be that the skeletons that had been dead for 100,000 years had come back to life? It was also because of this confusion that Ao Shiyun and Ray Budong's attacks really injured this middle-grade supreme martial artist. He hadn't felt injured for 7,000 to 8,000 years. Now that this feeling suddenly appeared, it was really a wonderful feeling. Right at this moment, another wild wolf-like attack appeared. He had just gathered his energy, and was about to kill this guy when another attack came. And this sword light carried a destructive aura, that kind of murderous aura, that kind of terrifying concept. It was even more terrifying than the previous attacks combined. Xiao Chunlei roared. He hurriedly mobilized all the cultivation in his body and faced the attack fiercely. Luo Kadi shouted as a sword light crossed the sky, charging toward Xiao Chunlei as if he was determined to die. Xiao Chunlei had countless ways. He also had 10,000% confidence that he could kill him with one blow. But he didn't dare to. Because if he did that here, the sword light on the right would definitely poke a hole in his body. Even if it wouldn't be fatal, it would still be troublesome. His cultivation had reached the level of a middle-grade supreme martial artist. They wouldn't get hurt easily, but once they did, it wouldn't be easy to heal. It would definitely take a long time to recover. This was also the true reason why Ning Tianyan needed such a long time to recover from his injuries. But under such circumstances, how could he be injured when the other party was so strong? He roared and slashed at Luo Kadi. However, Luo Kadi was extremely intelligent. So, how could he possibly attack in the same way? He had already swung his sword 30 times in the air. 30 streaks of sword light converged into one and slashed down ferociously with the force of toppling mountains and overturning seas. With a loud clang, Luo Kadi spurted out a mouthful of blood. His body flew out like a kite with a broken string. In the past, saying like a kite with a broken string was not so accurate. But this time, Second Master Luo was too vivid. He was running forward at high speed when he suddenly bumped head-on. With a whoosh, he flew back. His speed was so fast that even his pants were torn off. Fortunately, he still remembered to use the tip of his foot to hook, therefore, his hairy thighs were exposed, and his trousers and robes were hanging on his toes. He didn't even make a somersault as he flew straight ahead. It was a huge kite, and it was absolutely lifelike. Ao Shiyun and Ray Budong were originally feeling extremely uncomfortable with their blood surging in their chests and abdomens. But at this moment, they couldn't help but smile. On the other side, Xiao Chunlei and Chu Yang had already collided fiercely. Just like two shooting stars flying opposite each other in the night sky, they collided fiercely. Calamity Sword, what harm is there in slaughtering the whole world? This time, Chu Yang didn't hide anything. He used all his strength to launch this move. The purest and most concentrated move. This time, he didn't have any intention of hiding his identity. In Chu Yang's eyes, these people from the Shao clan today were already dead. No matter what, they must be killed. And this was also Yu Lingshue's intention. With such a guarantee, Chu Yang didn't have any worries. Dead people would never reveal secrets. The long sword was about to reach him. At the moment when they were about to come into contact with each other, the memory of the ancient legend in Shao Chunlei's mind suddenly awakened. At this moment he, who was at the peak of his power, suddenly widened his eyes and cried out in horror. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? With a cold smile on his lips, Chu Yang's face was expressionless. Without a word, he pounced over fiercely. But Shao Chunlei's heart was in a mess. Not only was it in a mess, but it was also in fear. He finally understood now who these people who fought with him one after another were. It was actually the legendary Calamity Sword Master and his tribulation. No wonder each of them was so frighteningly talented. No wonder each of them was so sharp. At such an age, even the most outstanding one among the descendants of the big clans couldn't compare to the weakest one. The Calamity Sword Master was indeed the Calamity Sword Master, and tribulation was indeed tribulation. Like a long rainbow, the sword light was already in front of him. Shao Chunlei shouted. Calamity Sword Master, do you think I'm afraid of you? There was a mocking look in Chu Yang's eyes. If you're not afraid, why did you say it? Shao Chunlei almost wanted to give himself a tight slap. This sentence was really said without any confidence, and it was also clearly telling the enemy that he was already afraid. The long sword suddenly turned into a light circle and a light wall to meet Chu Yang's sword. With a loud boom, Shao Chunlei discovered to his heartache that his sword had shattered into pieces in an instant, turning into broken pieces of iron. This sword of his had already clashed with Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang, Xia Danqiong, Ao Xian, Ray Badong and Luo Ke's enemies one after another. The weapons of each of these people were divine weapons. It was already extremely rare for them to be able to hold on until now without breaking, but they were already at the end of their rope. And at this moment, they met the Calamity Sword Master's Calamity Sword. They met the Sword Master. How could it not fall apart immediately? The long sword shattered, and the light screen disappeared immediately. The sword light was torn into pieces. Shao Chunlei roared and slashed down with all his strength. The funny thing was that at the moment when the long sword shattered, he was still thinking in his heart, damn it, I'm really stupid. Facing the Calamity Sword Master and his Calamity Sword, I actually used a weapon to deal with it. Isn't that sending food to the Calamity Sword? I really shouldn't have done that. But as he thought this, he instinctively slashed out with his saber again. At the same time, he was regretting in his heart. Why did I send my saber out again? But with a clang, the saber that was already riddled with scars also shattered. Chu Yang's sword momentum did not change. It went straight in. There was already blood at the corner of his mouth. In the two encounters just now, although Shao Chunlei had no intention to fight, his huge cultivation of a mid-stage supreme martial artist still shocked Chu Yang quite a bit. But he didn't care at all. So what if he slaughtered the whole world? He had only used half of it, and there was still some power left. Shao Chunlei roared and attacked continuously with both palms. Instantly, the wind blew and clouds surged. Dozens of palms struck out consecutively, and at the same time, he retreated quickly. He finally started to retreat. Although there were no less than dozens of reasons, although whether it was the consumption of his body, spirit, consciousness, weapons and cultivation, he had been hit repeatedly in this battle. It was already less than half of his usual cultivation. And after seeing the Calamity Sword Master, he already had no intention to fight, but this was after all the first time since Chu Yang's debut that a mid-stage supreme martial artist retreated in front of him. This was a historical moment. The Calamity Sword Master forced a mid-stage supreme martial artist to retreat for the first time. Below, countless people raised their heads to watch. Watching this fierce battle, everyone felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. That kind of enormous pressure. The two of them faced each other. Xiao Qinlei retreated while Chu Yang controlled the sword light and attacked with his sword. The wind from his palms whistled. More and more blood flowed from the corner of Chu Yang's mouth. There were also many broken bones in his body. But he pursed his lips, his gaze cold and firm. As if this sword would not stop until it pierced a hole in the mid-stage supreme martial artist's body. One advanced and one retreated, the speed was completely different. Xiao Qinlei roared. Chu Yang's calamity sword was finally close to him. Xiao Qinlei felt the chilling aura of the sword light. Finally, there was no way to avoid it. He finally wanted to fight with his life on the line. Before this, if someone said that he would fight with his life on the line in this battle, even he himself would scoff at it. But now, he was really fighting with his life on the line. He opened his arms. Suddenly, from every position and every part of his body, even his hair, crisscross sword energy came out. Full attack! Chu Yang laughed and said, "That dragon and phoenix, I want them. Do you have any objections?" Then, he was sent flying. But before he was sent flying, a sword also pierced into Xiao Qinlei's right shoulder. It was only 3 inches into his flesh before it was stopped by a majestic force. It could no longer go any further. Blood splattered in the sky. Laughing, Chu Yang retreated like a meteor. No one knew that at this moment, he had already taken 2 incomplete versions of heavy pills. From Du Duxing's attack to Chu Yang's retreat, the process seemed long, but in fact, it was only the blink of an eye. The Calamity Brothers, including the Sword Master, were all in a life and death crisis. How could a mid-stage supreme martial artist be easy? The danger of this battle was beyond anyone's imagination. Only Chu Yang himself knew that in this extremely short battle, he had already died twice. But he had completed a historical event. He made the high and mighty mid-stage supreme martial artist, who had become a legend of the heavenly layer, retreat in front of his own brothers. And he was injured. Even though this mid-stage supreme martial artist was only a beginner mid-stage supreme martial artist and was far from peak experts like Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, he was still a mid-stage supreme martial artist after all. This battle proved that Chu Yang and his brothers already had the qualifications to march towards the peak of the heavenly layer. Xiao Qinlei retreated extremely gloomily. The sharp pain in his right shoulder made him extremely angry. Although the wound was small, it was bleeding. And the sword energy attached to the sword exploded instantly, flowing along his meridians, making his right shoulder unable to move freely. Just as he was about to retreat, there was a sudden burst of mist in the air around him. A sword suddenly flashed out of the void. A Mo layer attacked at this moment. A red light flashed. Dreamlike, the Qing Wu dream saber suddenly appeared. And Mo Qing Wu slashed with her saber. It was the most uncomfortable moment for Xiao Qinlei. Chapter 1406. Xiao Qinlei thought for a while and finally decided. Investigate thoroughly immediately. Send more people over from the direction of the station. In addition, give instructions to each person to be specifically responsible and implicate them. Ensure that there are no problems in any link. Smart children remember the net and super fast typing. This time, the enemy is not very strong, but their combined strength is definitely not to be ignored. So, once something needs to go out, it must be in a team of more than 3 people. At any time, the battle alert formation must be maintained. When Xiao Qinlei said this, he sighed a little. He was thinking about today's fight. The more he thought about it, the more scared he felt. Elder Master, are these people today really the Tribulation Sword Master and his tribulation? That long horse face asked curiously. There is absolutely no mistake in this part. Xiao Qinlei sighed deeply and said, Not only are you in disbelief, I also didn't expect that the Tribulation Sword Master would choose the Xiao clan as his opponent in his first appearance in the heavens. Is the Tribulation Sword Master from the Chu clan? Horseface frowned. At the side, GMO also pricked up his ears. Not necessarily. Xiao Chenlei said. The sky was dark, I couldn't see their faces clearly. In addition, they came one after another, all in the midst of flying dust and sand, and a few of them even disguised themselves. He paused and said, However, even if the Tribulation Sword Master is not from the Chu clan, he definitely has something to do with the Chu clan. As he spoke, he channeled energy to heal his injuries and said, At the very least, one of the tribulations is from the Chu clan. Everyone gasped. In that case, we are going against one of the major clans in the future. This news must be reported to the clan as soon as possible. Xiao Chenlei frowned and said, Communication jades still can't be used? Horseface said in distress. Yes, within the range of the dragon and phoenix bones, communication jades can't be used at all. We have to walk out of Aspen Valley to restore communication. Walk out of Aspen Valley? Xiao Chenlei frowned. Doesn't that mean we have entered their ambush circle? It's too risky. Let's hurry up and send the invisible falcon. All right. Immediately, someone hurried to write. They prepared to send the invisible falcon. Xiao Chenlei sighed. After stopping the bleeding, a long-bearded supreme being asked curiously, Old Ancestor, we were able to see the battle just now from below. But there's one thing that I can't figure out. Xiao Chenlei exhaled. You're talking about my injuries? The long-bearded supreme martial artist said respectfully. Yes, from the battle just now, it was obvious that the Sword Sovereign was not even at the 4th grade. That saber's supremacy definitely hadn't transcended the boundary between immortal and mortal. As for the others, they're only at the 3rd or 4th level. Even with their cultivation bases, they shouldn't be able to break through your protective true energy. Even if they're tribulations, they shouldn't be able to hurt you, Patriarch. Not to mention. The long-bearded supreme martial artist muttered to himself for a moment before he gathered his courage and finished his sentence. Such serious injuries. Xiao Chenlei looked up and heaved a long sigh. There's naturally a reason for this. Everyone listened attentively. GMO blinked. He also leaned his head over. Xiao Chenlei said, There have always been people who say, tribulation as one is invincible in the world. Today, I finally understand the meaning of this sentence. The first wave of attacks, the joint attack of the Sword Sovereign and the Saber Sovereign, already exceeded the scope of their own cultivation. It was only when the tribulations appeared one after another, and the strength of the attacks became stronger and stronger that I realized that as long as the tribulations attacked, there seemed to be an inexplicable connection between them, and they could make full use of each other's remaining power. When the Sword Sovereign attacked, the power of that sword was already equivalent to that of a 7th or 8th grade supreme martial artist. Xiao Chenlei sighed and said, In the past, people said that when tribulations become one, they're invincible. I didn't believe this because tribulations are after all human. Their strength is mixed. Even if they join forces, what can they do? It's only now that I know. Tribulations are a natural combination. If this goes on, once they become supreme martial artists, they'll have already become a force to be reckoned with. To get rid of them will be very difficult. After Xiao Chenlei finished his last sentence, he sighed somewhat despondently. His eyes stared blankly into the void, and for a moment, he was somewhat absent-minded. After a long time, he murmured, The original intention of today's trap was to kill. But from the looks of it today, to be able to kill one of them is victory. After a long time, Xiao Chenlei finally uttered the last 4 words. I'll go to the place where the dragon and phoenix bones are, and see if there's any way to move them out. Xiao Chenlei moved and floated to the bottom of the cave. But everyone could feel that the Elder Master's back view at this moment seemed to be a little bleak. Xiao Chenlei's voice sounded in the long-bearded supreme martial artist's ears. If there's a chance to protect this Jian Yi, this guy may be a hope. The long-bearded supreme martial artist was stunned. Xiao Chenlei had already gone far away. On the other side, Mo Tianji and the others lay quietly in the huge phoenix nests at the top of the parasol trees, looking at where the Yang clan used to be. The current Xiao clan's base camp. They could vaguely see people coming from the direction of the purple crystal mine. Then, 40 to 50 people were ready to follow them. It was already the latter half of the night. Mo Tianji pondered for a while. When he felt that they had gone far enough, he waved his hand and said softly, "We'll take action after half an hour. From the ground, we'll be completely uprooted and then immediately attack with all our might. Take note, at most 2 breaths. We must end the battle, destroy all resources, and then evacuate." In the purple crystal mine, a few invisible falcons flapped their wings and flew up. They circled one round and soared into the sky, flying rapidly toward the east. The long-bearded supreme martial artist looked up and watched as the invisible falcons flew into the sky and disappeared. He then used his spiritual power to track them for a while. After confirming that they had already flown out of Aspen Valley, he turned around and went back with ease. Outside Aspen Valley, Yu Lingshua's clothes were as white as snow. He stood under the bright moon and the cool breeze. It was as if he had become one with heaven and earth. He smiled lightly and stood with his hands behind his back. When the long-bearded supreme martial artist had just retracted his divine sense, Yu Lingxue opened his eyes at once. A relaxed smile appeared at the corners of his lips. He raised his head slightly and said calmly, "Come down!" He reached out, his palm facing the sky. Rustling sounds rang out. The 5 invisible falcons flapped their wings with all their might and descended from a height of several thousand feet in a straight line, quietly landing on Yu Lingshue's palm. They tilted their heads and looked at this stranger strangely, as if they were puzzled. Why was it that they couldn't fly when this person was here? Yu Lingxue smiled and said, "Little fellow!" Then, he untied the cylinder from the leg of the invisible falcons and poured out the wax pills inside. He crushed them casually. Then, he opened his hand and said with a smile, "Go on." The 5 invisible falcons looked at him strangely. They were probably wondering, "Is this person sick in the head? He actually didn't do anything after catching us." Then, they tilted their heads neatly and flew out. Not long after, they disappeared between heaven and earth. Yu Lingxue smiled with his hands behind his back. Feeling the tranquility in the distance, he said softly, "Tonight is the moment when heaven and earth shatter again." He reached out and looked at his fair fingers. He said softly, "This pair of hands is going to be stained with blood again. 10, 10, 10, 10, 3, 2, 1. As Chu Yang bent down his 10 fingers one by one, Gu Duxing Dong Wishang, Luo Kadi, Ao Shiyun, Xia Danqiong, Rui Batong, Mo Tianji, Mo Layer, and Mo Qingwu attacked together. At the same time, streams of powerful energy seeped into the ground from all directions. Gradually, they began to spiral into the ground like a spiderweb. It should have been Mo Tianji who gave the orders, but Mo Tianji was determined to give this right to Chu Yang. Mo Tianji's reason was very simple: one group. There could only be one core. Only when you clearly tell me to take command will I be able to take command. But before that, they could only revolve around the core. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't work. When Chu Yang counted to 1, the moment he paused, the power of the 10 people erupted at the same time. There was a loud bang. The entire Yang clan compound in Aspen Valley, including the foundation and the surrounding soil slopes, as well as the flowers and trees, exploded. They flew up into the sky as if riding on the clouds. After the commotion and the great battle earlier, everyone believed that the purple crystal mine was the real core, the battlefield. Therefore, all the supporting personnel had already gone there. Besides, although Xiao Chunlei didn't believe Mo Tianji's 3 days later, he definitely didn't expect that they could launch such a thunderous attack right after a great battle with a low-grade supreme martial artist tonight. No matter what, their injuries couldn't be healed in a short period of time. Although Xiao Chunlei also knew about the miraculous effects of the heavy pill, he definitely didn't expect it to be able to heal injuries like broken bones completely in an instant. Any miraculous elixir, even the legendary immortal elixirs, would require a period of time to recover. However, the incomplete version of the heavy pill had such a heaven-defying effect. A series of panic screams rang out from the room that was still intact, and then it flew up thousands of feet into the air. Chu Yang's expression was calm as he shouted, "Go!" With a sword in hand, thousands of cold rays of light burst out in an instant. His whole person rushed out like a colorful and bright light pillar. But in an instant, he became one with the sword. Then, as he rushed forward, the sword swinging wildly, one ray of cold light pierced 10,000 feet. What harm was there in slaughtering the whole world? He used it all the way to who controls the power of life and death. When the 5 fingers close, the sky is about to fall. When the tribulation is scattered, the wind and clouds gather, blood is as black as ink outside the sky. The tribulation sword technique, and at the same time, he used the first section to the second section with all his might. The sword intent was activated at the same time. In an instant, wind and thunder surged between heaven and earth. The bright sword light seemed to cover up the sky, the moon, and the stars together. It illuminated the whole world at the same time. From another position, Gu Duxing rushed out as one with the sword, like a cold and sharp shooting star in the sky, alone and stubbornly shooting across the sky. Dong Wushang's dark saber was like the falling sky, and the saber light was like the Milky Way falling from the sky, rushing over vigorously. Wherever it passed, the mighty aura caused countless trees to fly out neatly. Recommend a new book, Black Earth's Flickering Fist Light. Brothers who like Eastern fantasy can go and take a look. Announce a piece of good news. Our proud World Star Dream Qingwu group has opened a group. The group number is 2939898837. This is the first ordinary book group in the proud world. If you have an account, you can vote for a recommendation. Open a QQ account in the proud world Heavenly Realm book review section, and you can enter after confirming your account. Brothers and sisters are welcome to come. From now on, we will bear the storm of proud world together. We will bear the glory and disgrace of proud world together. Chapter 1407. Ao Shiyun roared and flew into the air. His sword light swayed like a golden dragon soaring into the sky. With a flash of golden light, he charged toward the building in midair. Rui Budong let out a clear cry and rose into the air. Scorching flames suddenly appeared all over his body, burning the air wherever he passed. He flew all the way, leaving behind a shattered space behind him. Xie Danqiong leaped into the air. In an instant, he saw a long vine extending endlessly in the air. At the end of the vine, a flower bud slowly expanded in the wind. Smart kids remember Network's super fast hands. One could imagine that the moment he charged into the target in midair was the moment the viburnum flower bloomed beautifully and exploded. Luo Kudi charged forward like a pack of wolves. With a loud howl, he flew out from another direction. Mo Qingwu's red dress danced like a fairy dancing in the sky. In the infinitely beautiful land, her delicate body shot into the air. Qingwu dream saber transformed into a dreamland in the sky. Mo layer moved lightly and merged into the void, disappearing without a trace. The last one was of course Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji rose into the air but didn't participate in this slaughter. Instead, he stood high in midair, calmly looking at the spectacular scene in front of him. At the front, sword light shone like the sun in the sky, radiating with an aura that could destroy everything. That was the Tribulation Sword Master, Chu Yang. Then, although the few brothers charged from different positions, they naturally formed a line. Just like a sword. A long sword that cut open the entire night sky was galloping in midair. The tip of the sword, Gu Duxing. A cold light shone, cold and lonely, with a sharpness that could pierce through everything, cold and arrogant as it rushed forward. On the left, Dong Wushang was like the tip of the sword, mighty and powerful. On the right, Ao Xian was just like the tip of the sword, with the aura of a golden dragon, moving freely. Unstoppable. And Xie Danqiong alone formed the body of the sword, in the center. Luo Kadi and Rui Budong were like the guards on both sides of the sword hilt. Mo Qingwu's red dress fluttered. Her dance shocked the heavens. In the mighty torrent, she swayed and followed resolutely. The entire sword became a torrent that wreaked havoc in the world, rushing past. And the last one to hold down the fort was Mo Tianji, who was currently motionless. Mo Tianji stood there quietly, looking at the spectacular scene before him. Tears welled up in his eyes. Not long ago, he and his brothers were still fighting and scheming against each other in the three heavens. In that world, an emperor-level expert could dominate a clan. He thought he could summon the wind and summon the rain. He looked at the world with cold eyes, but did not know how big the world was. Right now, however, they had already formed a torrent that could change the heavens. At this moment, Mo Tianji suddenly had a clear feeling. When his brothers rushed out majestically, he was suddenly filled with lofty sentiments. It was as if a new era had arrived. Brothers of tribulation, gather in green sky. The sword master of heaven and earth, destroying everything in its path. In the layered heavens, a storm was brewing. The heroes of the world, who can compete with him? Mo Tianji's body trembled with excitement. He could clearly feel that his fate was in his hands. The world was in his hands. The mighty winds and clouds were in his hands. This was the Calamity Sword. This was the Calamity Sword Master. This was the tribulation. I'm right there. Not just Mo Tianji. At this moment, not just Chu Yang, Gu Duxing Dong Wushang, or even GMO who was lying in the purple crystal mine. At the same time, he had such a clear feeling. Dominating the world, I'm the only tribulation. I'm right there. With a thunderous roar, Chu Yang rushed into the building that originally belonged to the Yang clan with his blood boiling. He rushed in from a height of 1,000 feet. The devastating sword light was like a bomb at this moment, shooting in all directions. Everywhere it passed, everything was turned into powder in an instant. Even the flowers, trees, grains, livestock, and even human bodies. Everything was turned into powder. Chu Yang's sword aura continued to blossom, rushing straight in. Never turning back. Never turning. Just like that, he rushed into the void on the other side. Then, Gu Duxing, this cold and arrogant lonely swordsman, unleashed the most powerful sword attack in his life at this moment, charging in fiercely from a diagonal direction. Everywhere it passed, everything was penetrated and exploded in midair. Dong Wushang's roar shook the wind and clouds. His dark saber was like a huge wave, mercilessly crushing everything. Everywhere it passed, it was as if a hurricane had passed through, leaving no survivors. Then, it was Ao Xian, Xia Danqiong, Luo Kadi, Ray Butong, and Mo Qingwu, whizzing past. After everyone passed through, they didn't need to turn around to be sure that the huge house that they had blasted into the sky, together with the thick land and the surrounding forests and hills, all turned into powder. Occasionally, someone might have screamed, but no one paid attention to it. In any case, this temporary base of the Shao clan was completely destroyed. Mo Layer, who was the last to attack, went invisible in midair first before attacking. When she reached the ground, she realized that she had rushed through a field of powder and actually didn't hit anything that was intact, not even a single thing the size of a fingernail. It was as if she had used all her strength and ran with all her might, that was all. She couldn't help but be amazed by the combat power of Chu Yang and the rest. These guys were really too abnormal. They didn't even leave anything for her. Depressed, Mo Layer turned around and ran, only to realize that she had fallen behind again. Everyone who had attacked in front had already turned into streams of light and ran back. Although Mo Qingwu was the last, she was still in front of her. With a whoosh, Chu Yang landed in front of Mo Tianji first. Then, with a whoosh, everyone landed one after another. Mo Tianji didn't make any comments at all. It was a matter that had already been completed. And as long as Mo Tianji didn't find any flaws, he definitely wouldn't make any conclusions. He just said hurriedly, "Are you tired? Can you continue to attack like that just now?" "Definitely no problem." Dong Wushang laughed heartily. All the brothers said the same thing one by one. "Very good." Mo Tianji quickly turned around and pointed. "Set up an ambush here. Get ready to ambush immediately. Quick!" Chu Yang waved his hand. "Everyone, follow me!" None of the brothers had any objections, and they all went down in a single file. In an instant, it was empty. And Mo Tianji pointed with his right hand. Du Xing, you are over there. Wu Shag and Lei are over there. Chu Yang and Qing Wu over there. Ao Xieyun and Luo Kadi over there. Rui Butong, you are with me. Xie Danqiong, you are over there. At the position that Mo Tianji pointed out, everyone disappeared in an instant. Everyone, adjust to your best condition. If you see the enemy coming, you only need to repeat the attack just now and immediately return to your original position to gather. No one is allowed to continue fighting. Only one attack is allowed. Mo Tianji's voice was like a breeze. I'll say it again. Only one attack is allowed. Everyone nodded their heads and focused their attention. In less than a breath's time after Mo Tianji's voice fell, 30 to 40 people flew over in exasperation from high up in the sky. Their leader had a horse-like face. The people at the Purple Crystal Mine had received the news. They immediately went back to help. This was really unexpected. They had just been attacked. Even the low-grade supreme martial artists were injured. They had just transferred a large number of men over. This side actually suffered a devastating blow right away. At this time, Xiao Qinlei was still circulating his energy to recover from his injuries. There were also 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists who had to look after the dragon and phoenix bones. They had no choice but to send these people over to see if they could still save a few of their own. After all, there were also 2 4th-grade supreme martial artists, and 3 to 4 1st-grade and 2nd-grade supreme martial artists guarding this base camp. They couldn't possibly all be destroyed in one move, right? That was why Autark Horseface had hurried over in a flustered and nervous manner. The moment he turned the corner and saw the original location of the base camp, he let out a heart-wrenching roar. I'm going to kill all of you bastards! That manor actually no longer existed in one piece. A brand new huge pit appeared on the ground. It was quiet all around, like a ghost town. Supreme Martial Artist Horseface was devastated. My son! My grandson! I'm going to kill my way to the flat mountain ridge right away and flatten the Chu clan. I'm going to kill every single one of them. He rushed down crazily. The moment he rushed down, everyone followed behind, their eyes spitting fire. There was nothing in front of them, not even a single tree. It was really a flat land, therefore, the Xiao clan experts were slightly relieved while on guard. They swooped down. Right at this moment, a ray of light suddenly soared into the sky, instantly spreading out into a sharp sword ray that spanned 1,000 feet. In almost a flash, it was right in front of them. A voice said, "One ray of cold light, 10,000 feet of light. What harm is there in slaughtering the whole world?" Clang! A sword chime. All the sword supremacy swords chimed at the same time. Sword supremacy! The sword supremacy actually appeared again after exchanging blows with the 2nd-grade supreme martial artist Xiao Qinlei. This matter shocked all the Xiao clan experts immensely. Even the Elder Master had not recovered yet, but he had already recovered? By the time the voice rang out, that sword light had already smashed into the crowd tyrannically, meeting the sword light of the Xiao family experts who had hurriedly stabbed out. A bright light that could almost blind the eyes of a person suddenly exploded. And at this moment, another sword chime appeared out of nowhere. A piercingly cold sword aura arrived. The Xiao clan was instantly in chaos. Fuck! Why was there another sword supremacy? The sound of a saber rang out like a dragon's roar. Then, there was a clang, followed by a scream. Then, people rushed over from all directions, crisscrossing. The Xiao clan had 38 experts, far more than Chu Yang and the rest. But at this moment, they were in a disadvantageous position. They felt as if there were enemies in front and behind them, trampling on them at the same time. As a 2nd-grade supreme martial artist and the one with the highest cultivation in the Xiao clan, Supreme Martial Artist Horseface immediately shouted, "Form the cylindrical formation. As long as we can withstand the first attack." Then, before he finished, a scream suddenly rang out. It was Chu Yang who had rushed over first. His sword aura shattered, and the sword in his hand instantly turned into powder. Then, Chu Yang charged past him. Supreme Martial Artist Horse Face suddenly raised his body. Gu Duxing's sword arrived. Supreme Martial Artist Horse Face shook his hands and slapped out furiously. Gu Duxing broke through the palm force and dashed right into the crowd. Then Dong Wushang's saber slashed down without stopping. Supreme Martial Artist Horse Face was broken through twice in a row. He almost couldn't stand steadily. With nowhere to hide, he channeled his energy and blocked with his huge palms. When Dong Wushang's saber landed, his arms were instantly shattered into 1,700 to 1,800 pieces. At this moment, Supreme Martial Artist Horse Face's screams practically rushed straight to the heavens. But in front of him, Ao Xian and Luo Kadi's swords flew together, Xie Danqiong's viburnum flowers bloomed, and Mo Qingwu's red dress was like a dream as they came one after another. Chapter 1408. In front of the purple crystal mine, smoke and dust filled the air. Smart kids remember the world. Super fast hands. Xiao Chenlei looked at the corpses in front of him, his whole body trembling. That silent fury had already turned into a raging fire, almost burning himself to ashes. Just now, that damned group of evil thieves had ambushed his men right in front of his eyes. Out of the 17 supreme martial artists, 10 were killed by this attack. The only one left was also on the verge of death, covered in wounds all over. The other party's attack was like thunder and lightning, launched before anyone could react. Before anyone could react, it was already over. And it was this kind of surprise attack. They didn't give anyone a chance to counterattack or track them down at all. Once the attack was launched, no matter if it was real or not, they retreated immediately. This was the typical style of an assassin. Faced with such an enemy, even if Xiao Chenlei was furious, there was nothing he could do. The enemy didn't fight you head-on at all. Moreover, they were proficient in the art of concealment, and concealment. Even if you had great cultivation, what could you do? There was nothing you could do. In the next 4 to 5 days, Mo Tianji commanded his brothers to launch surprise attacks again and again, frequently moving out. Attacks came from all directions, everywhere, and every time, they would leave as soon as they touched. They came and went without a trace. The worst result was 2 or 3 casualties. Of course, the most glorious result wasn't great either, only killing a dozen or so people and destroying some facilities. But in the face of such attacks, the Xiao clan was already on the verge of collapse from the torture. Everyone was on tenterhooks, every one of them was jittery, as if there would be enemies charging up from behind at any time. The current situation is that we are outnumbered. If we fight them head-on, we are finished. So when the enemy thinks that we will definitely attack, even if we have absolute confidence in winning, we can't move. If we fight them head-on, even if we win, it will be a loss. On the battlefield, we will do anything to kill the enemy. So, when they think that we won't attack, we will attack. And we will attack one after another. In a head-on battle, we can annihilate the enemy, but we will have to bear our own losses. 10 surprise attacks can also annihilate the enemy, but we can avoid our own losses. In that case, as long as there are no special circumstances, even if we have to attack 20 times, we will also avoid any losses. Therefore, in this battle, every time you go out to fight, you'll be able to do it. Everyone is not allowed to attack more than once. It's best if you only use one move. In a dark corner, Mo Tianji was patiently explaining the tactics this time. Therefore, everyone shouldn't think that this is a disgrace. And don't hold the pedantic idea of I'm a righteous man, and I want to fight a decisive battle. Enemies on the battlefield. There is only life and death, victory and defeat. There is no righteous ruler, no despicable villain. At present, we have successfully attacked more than 30 times in the past 5 days, so the next attack will be more difficult. In the past 5 days, we've been attacked almost every day, so they must have taken precautions, so they're resting today. and Mo Tianji gave the order to rest. The brothers felt as if they had been pardoned. The past few days have been really tormented. The Xiao clan is nervous, but how can we not be nervous? In fact, we are even more tired than them. We are literally running for our lives. Now, this Mo Tianji who oppresses us like a tyrant has finally found his conscience. Everyone scattered like birds and beasts. Dong Wuxiang and Mo Laer accompanied them. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. The others were all chatting idly. Mo Tianji, who had not participated in the battle all this while, began to do the hard work. First, he used his essence power to dig a hole, silently creating a place to rest underground. Then, he used purple crystals to set up a formation on the surface, creating a natural formation for the brothers to enter. Then Mo Tianji said, "Sleep at ease and snore at ease. With this formation, no one can hear you even if you flip the sky." After that, loud snoring sounds could be heard. When Mo Tianji saw Mo Qingwu sneakily moving, then she leaned on Chu Yang and closed her eyes to sleep. He couldn't help but sigh. Chu Yang was at a loss. He looked over curiously and met Mo Tianji's teeth-gritting expression. Instantly, he came to his senses and winked proudly. He reached out and hugged Mo Qingwu in his arms. With a smile on his face, he closed his eyes and went to sleep. Mo Tianji's breath was stuck in his throat. They were relaxed and on vacation. All of them were sleeping soundly and soundly. However, how could the Xiao clan be able to fall asleep? They were attacked for 5 consecutive days. Every day's time period was different. How could such a loss be described with the word tragic? On the first day, the other party came and fought a big battle with the Elder Master. They thought that after the battle, everyone would be seriously injured and there wouldn't be any movement for the next 2 to 3 days. But in the end, the other party went and attacked the headquarters that very night. They kicked the entire headquarters into the sky. The attack this time was extremely vicious. The Xiao clan could only eat what they had brought with them. Of course, the Xiao clan was full of experts. They wouldn't starve to death. But at that time, everyone thought that the other party would stop for a while after accomplishing such a strategic goal. Who would have thought that after the other party attacked the headquarters, they would attack the reinforcements while they were taking a breather? This wasn't the end. The reinforcements finally retreated after suffering heavy casualties. Then, they were attacked a second time at the entrance of the Purple Crystal Mine. They were completely wiped out. On the first night, there were 4 attacks. Every one of them was unexpected. On the second night, the Xiao clan searched for a day and a night but didn't find anything. Just as night fell, the entire Purple Crystal Mine was attacked by the other party. At that time, the sky had just turned dark. No one would have thought that the attack would be launched at that time. Wasn't it usually in the latter half of the night? So, they were in a complete mess again. Before they could reorganize, the other party actually launched a second attack from the original location of the attack. Xiao Chenlei was furious. He summoned his divine power and overturned the entire first-grade supreme martial artist in that area. But he didn't find anything. Then, the entire first half of the night passed. Finally, they judged that the enemy wouldn't come again. But when it was almost dawn, they attacked again. Then, the experts of the Xiao clan almost broke down. The most shameless thing was that after dawn, it was followed by another attack. And followed by another attack. In a day's time, they were attacked 12 times. Every time they were attacked, the Xiao clan would think, this should be the last time today, right? But it wasn't. And there was more. And it was a cycle that repeated over and over again. Every time it started in the blink of an eye, and then it was over before they could finish blinking. Finally, the experts of the Xiao clan understood. This bunch of fellows were going to be tormented for the whole day. At this time, everyone was full of hatred, and even if they couldn't sleep, they had to be ready for a head-on clash. The other party stopped abruptly and didn't come again. So, that night, the experts of the Xiao clan were so aggrieved and careful. And so, it went on until the 4th night. There was no movement. Everyone was so tired that they wanted to die. Just when they wanted to rest, the attack suddenly came again, and it was 3 times in a row. Everyone was guessing if it was going to continue for another 12 times. At that time, the other party suddenly stopped. They thought that the other party was going to attack when it was almost dawn. In the end, it didn't come. Seeing that the sun had already risen to the top of their heads, everyone started to rest for a while cursing. Who knew that it would come again at this time? And it was 4 or 5 times in a row. All in all, they couldn't figure out the other party's tactics. Xiao Chunlei had gone from anger to rage after being attacked countless times. Slowly it turned into helplessness. He looked up to the sky and sighed. Think Tank Jie is indeed elusive. In the face of such intelligence and scheming, I can't do anything at all. I can only look for opportunities time and time again. But how can the other party give us a chance? Everyone sighed together. If it weren't for the dragon and phoenix bones here, the matter would be very serious. Xiao Chunlei had already led everyone back to the clan and didn't want to suffer such endless and brainless humiliation here. But these dragon and phoenix bones couldn't be transported away, nor could they be opened, nor could they be smashed, nor could they be moved. This made Xiao Chunlei feel helpless. If they left, they couldn't leave. If they fought, they couldn't hit. If they stayed, they would only be holding their breath between a rock and a hard place. This was the most torturous. Now, they had just suffered an attack. The Xiao clan already understood. The other party would never stop. Every day, no matter what time it was, they would definitely attack, so everyone was on high alert. But half a day passed, and everyone was even more nervous. A day passed, and everyone became more and more nervous. When it was night time again, everyone was even more nervous. But all the way until noon of the 7th day, they still didn't come. Xiao Chunlei flew into a rage. Although the enemy didn't come, as time went by, the experts of the Xiao clan became more and more nervous. Even Xiao Chunlei couldn't calm them down. Because the other party could appear at any time, Xiao Chunlei looked at the more than 300 people in the mine, feeling rather sorrowful in his heart. When the Xiao clan came, after discovering the dragon and phoenix bones, they immediately sent a message to the clan and mobilized a team of 700 people with cultivation of monarch level and above. Now, within a day, they lost 500 people. There wasn't a single monarch level expert left. Those below 7th grade martial saints were also wiped out. Among the remaining 300 people, there were still 100 or so who were pure minors. Of the remaining 200 or so experts, less than half of them were uninjured. Xiao Chunlei heaved a long sigh and said, "Withdraw all the guards at the periphery and gather at the place where the dragon and phoenix bones are. Firstly, it's to gather. Secondly, everyone can also rest. Thirdly, the dragon and phoenix bones can't be destroyed. With this here, the mountain can't be destroyed at all. We'll wait here for them to fight to the death." Everyone's spirits were lifted, and there was finally some hope in their eyes. Then, everyone followed the plan and entered in a single file. Of course, the seriously injured second Master Ji also withdrew injustifiably. Here, after 8 days of undercover work, Jimo saw the dragon and phoenix bones with his own eyes for the first time. World-defying 7 Heavens VIP subscription group, 282688522. There are still dozens of empty seats. Welcome everyone. G. World-defying ordinary book group, 2939898837. You can join if you have an account to reply to the post. Welcome everyone. G. Last night, I drank and vomited all night, and today, I've been feeling unwell, my legs are still floating. I'll continue to write, the second update should be very late. Chapter 1409. Until the next day, there was finally a new movement. The Xiao clan experts who were hiding in the pit suddenly heard the roar of sword energy above them. They couldn't help but look at each other, somewhat gloating over their misfortune. Smart kids remember network super fast hands, damn it. Even if you're as cunning as a ghost, you missed this time, right? There's only a mountain outside, no one at all. You sneak attack? You'll die of exhaustion. Sure enough, after the other party wreaked havoc, they immediately retreated. Knowing that it was already useless to rush out when they heard the sound of the other party's attack, Xiao Chunlei sat still and didn't move. He just waited quietly. Little ones, I'm afraid you won't come. If you want to get the dragon and phoenix bones, you can only enter the mine. And once you enter the mine, the terrain won't be as vast as outside. Wanting to come and go like the wind and leave with a single strike was absolutely impossible. Besides, due to the existence of the dragon and phoenix bones, this place can't be damaged at all. So, as long as you dare to enter the mine, even if you're a tribulation, you can only become a corpse here. Xiao Chunlei's eyes burned with rage. Blood for blood. The blood of the Xiao clan is not so easily spilled. The only thing that Xiao Chunlei was puzzled about now was, according to the time, the clan should have already received the invisible falcons he released during this period of time, and should have already reacted. But there was no news even after so long? What was going on outside? Mo Tianji smiled and looked at the quiet mountain top, a rare comfortable smile on his lips. They've indeed retreated inside. Chu Yang smiled. Tianji, your initial plan wasn't to annihilate them outside, right? Were you going to force these people into the mine right from the start? Mo Tianji smiled and nodded. Yes. There are too many of them. Once they're defeated, it's inevitable that some of them will escape desperately. In that case, we definitely won't be able to hunt them down one by one. Our secret. Our identities will also be leaked. For us now, this is still something that we can't bear. So we force them step by step, forcing them to break down completely. The only way to come up with a foolproof plan is to hide in the mine. And inside, it's easy to defend and hard to attack. The place isn't big, and it's not suitable for us to attack. If we attack, it'll be the same as walking right into a trap. Therefore, this method is the best. Mo Tianji smiled confidently. And this old ancestor of the Xiao clan does indeed have some brains. Chu Yang laughed out loud. But you're right about one thing. Hiding inside is indeed the best way to deal with us so far. But we can't go in. What should we do? Mo Tianji indifferently said. If I can think of a solution for them, then I can solve it. How do you break it? Chu Yang smiled mischievously. Of course it's you. Mo Tianji turned to look at him and said, You are the sword master. It was such a difficult task. I can only entrust it to you. Chu Yang rubbed his nose and forced a smile. I knew that you were thinking about my stock. Mo Tianji smiled and said, In this mine, the air will definitely be polluted, and there won't be much circulation inside. So, after forcing them into such a place, under normal circumstances, there are 3 ways to kill them. If Ao Xie Yun's Divine Dragon Secret Manual reaches a high level, we can pour in mysterious sky-heavy water. This is the first way. If Ray Butong grows up, we can also use Nirvana Heavenly Fire to burn them to death. Of course, these 2 methods are not feasible now, so we can only use the 3rd method, which is poison. Mo Tianji smiled strangely. I don't believe that you're guarding Poison Dr. Wu Juqing, and your sister is the successor of Poison Doctor. Wouldn't she give you, her brother, some self-defense? He blinked. Normal poisons can't kill supreme martial artists, of course. But Poison Dr. Wu Juqing's shadowless poison is an exception as far as I know. Chu Yang forced a smile. She did give me quite a lot, but there's not much left now. I reckon that after using it this time, it'll be empty. Mo Tianji said heavily. I only care about what's in front of me, not the future. After he finished speaking, he suddenly smiled. Because you are the one to guide the future. I am only in charge of what to do when you guide the brothers to a certain place. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. Gu Duxing reminded. Don't forget that GMO is still in the cave. Mo Tianji frowned and said. Before he entered the cave, he didn't leave the incomplete version of the heavy pill with you, right? Gu Duxing said. No. Only then did he realize. At the same time, he felt a little strange. GMO didn't leave the heavy pill with him, and after entering the cave, the Xiao clan would definitely search him. where would he leave the incomplete version of the heavy pill? Mo Tianji said. Since that's the case, he won't die. That's also the trump card that GMO dared to enter. A strange smile appeared on his face, and he said, after he entered, for the sake of authenticity, he would definitely be seriously injured. And his injuries couldn't be healed immediately, so he could only wait for a certain time to think of a way to take the incomplete version of the heavy pill, so as to act as a surprise attack. Therefore, that heavy pill would definitely be carried with him. Chu Yang felt a little strange about his expression, but after thinking for a while, his face also involuntarily revealed a creepy smile. Gu Duxing scratched his head, and still felt a little strange, he said. But how was he so sure that the people inside wouldn't search him? Mo Tianji said meaningfully. Of course they would search him. Then why did he hide the heavy pill? Gu Duxing couldn't understand. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji both let out a sound at the same time, and couldn't help but laugh. Looking at the strange expressions of the two, Gu Duxing suddenly remembered that when GMO passed his sword to him, he used his hand to touch his own butt, and then, his face revealed a kind of strange expression. When he thought of this, Gu Duxing suddenly understood something, and his face couldn't help but turn pale. His right hand also couldn't help but touch his own butt, and said in a trembling voice, could it be? Chu Yang and Mo Tianji looked at his right hand that was touching his butt, and they both held back their laughter and nodded, giving him a "you're so smart" look. Ugh! Gu Duxing retched. He also almost threw up his food from last night. Looking at the sky with lifeless eyes, he muttered, what a genius! So strong! Then Chu Yang, Dong Wushang, Gu Duxing, and Rui Brong rushed into the mine. After a battle, the four of them escaped in a sorry state, cursing and swearing. Their entry and exit only took half a breath's time. But the four of them already had injuries on their bodies. Cheers came from inside. Luo Kudi cursed. Damn it! A bunch of cowards, come out and fight if you have the guts! A voice inside chuckled and said, come in if you have the guts! Luo Kudi was furious. Come out if you have the guts! Don't tell me you don't have the guts! The voice inside said. Come in if you have the guts! Don't tell me you don't have the guts! Second Master Luo was instantly enraged. He went to the entrance of the mine, put his hands on his hips, and instantly, a torrent of obscenities poured into the mine. The Shao clan experts inside were even more unwilling to be outdone. Coupled with their grievances, their cursing was no less than Luo Kudi's. Moreover, everyone cursed together. Second Master Luo obviously appeared to be alone, but the more he fought, the braver he became. He did not retreat a single step. His saliva splattered everywhere. In an instant, dozens of female relatives of the Shao clan's ancestors were implicated. Inside and outside the mine, curses were instantly heard. The viciousness and despicableness of their words made one's hair stand on end. While Luo Kudi was engaged in a battle of words with the crowd, Minister Chu had quietly entered several feet into the mine. Then, he activated the Titanic Divine Technique. He wrapped the invisible poison and the invisible poison, and went deep into the mine. Minister Chu was afraid that his poison would not kill, so he deliberately released all the stock that Chu Luer had given him. Even the most domineering innate poison floated down silently. It was very easy to apply poison upwards or to the left and right. After all, this poison was colorless and odorless, and it was very light. It could float up without any force. However, to go down, one had to use one's essence force to wrap it up and drop it straight down. How could ordinary essence force hide from a supreme martial artist? Not to mention that there was a second-grade supreme martial artist. Therefore, Chu Yang had no choice but to use the Chongtian divine technique directly to do this. He borrowed most of the sword spirit's power before he separated out a strand of primordial real silk. It turned into dozens of bubbles, wrapped in thick poisonous fog, and went down silently. If Wu Jueqing or Chu Le were here and saw that this guy was actually using such a strange poison, it was hard to say what Chu Le would do, but Wu Jueqing would definitely be so angry that he would pass out. Which of these poisons was easy to refine? Which of them was not a treasure in the world? What Chu Yang had, against the same number of experts, Wu Jueqing could use them at least 10 times. And the effect would be the same every time, but in Chu Yang's hands, he could barely use them once. And the effect was not as good as Wu Jueqing's 10 times each time. It was practically a reckless waste of resources. Ao Xian rubbed his chin. Watching Chu Yang in action, he murmured softly, I remember, when I was young, I used to catch mountain rats. This was how I did it. First, I made sure they were in the cave, then I blocked all the entrances, leaving only one, and filled it with smoke or water. And Mo Tianji said dispassionately, That's right. Therefore, in their eyes, this kind of strategy was foolproof because the terrain was good, but there was only one thing that was lacking, a way out. Therefore, no matter when, no matter how bad the environment, one must leave a way out for oneself. No matter what kind of flawless environment or strategy, as long as it exists in this world, there must be a way to break it. In this world, there is absolutely nothing perfect. Absolutely not. And Mo Tianji had spoken the last few words word by word. Gu Duxing, Ao Xian and the others felt a chill in their hearts. They silently remembered it. Rui Budong asked, What if they want to break our poison attack? What can they do? And Mo Tianji faintly smiled. The best way is to rush out. But they have already been forced inside by us. They think that they are safe. So, they won't come out even if they die. They are still waiting for us to throw away our lives. So, how can they come out? Chapter 14:10. Rui Budong took a deep breath and said, In that case, aren't they just waiting for death? Not necessarily. And Mo Tianji smiled and said, If I, Wu Qingro, or even those outstanding people from the Zhuge clan were in there, we would still have a way to resolve it. And there are several ways to avoid it. But they are not what they can think of at the moment. Therefore, for the people inside now, there is no solution to this plan. They can only resist it with their cultivation, and that's after they discover the poison. He smiled lightly and said, Of course. The second-grade supreme martial artist Xiao Chunlei inside probably won't die. And whether it works on him or not is still uncertain. So we must not be careless. At this moment, Chu Yan had already released all the stock. He came back quietly and lightly. With a smile, he said, Let's wait. And Mo Tianji chuckled. We have plenty of patience. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. With a strange look on his face, Chu Zhang said lightly, It has already been more than a month since we left the Lan clan. During this time, I don't know how anxious Wu Qingru must be. And Mo Tianji's expression also became strange. He held back his laughter and said, I think Wu Qingru must be having a hard time. Even if it were me, it would also be very hard, very hard. I'm afraid it's not just hard, it's also very frustrating, very puzzling, very perturbed and in a dilemma. Chu Yan laughed loudly. And Mo Tianji also couldn't help but smile. On the side, Gu Duxing, the sword supremacy, was not as cunning as these two schemers. He stared blankly and didn't know what was going on. He totally didn't know what these two guys, one more sinister than the other, were laughing about. On the other side, Luo Kudi's words flowed like a river. He was scolding in high spirits. The counterattacks inside were also as fierce as ever. At this moment, the battle between supreme martial artists had actually become a quarrel. In the cave, GMO was so anxious that he opened and closed his mouth, wishing he could join in. What a pity! He actually couldn't join in such an exciting quarrel and let Luo Kudi, this fool, take the lead. He was in the limelight. It was really too depressing. If I go out, I can at least give the Xiao clan a few more dog ants. Xiao Chunlei sat in front of the dragon and phoenix bones. He frowned and pondered. In front of him, the giant skeletons of the golden dragon and the giant skeletons of the colorful phoenix stood quietly. They were entangled together. The soil and stones in all directions had been cleared away. However, he couldn't move the ground beneath his feet. It was as if the dragon and phoenix were connected to the earth. If they wanted to move, they would have to move the entire sky layer world. A peculiar aura made Xiao Qinlei, a mid-grade supreme martial artist, unable to move the skeletons of the dragon and phoenix at all. Furthermore, even if he used all his strength, he still wouldn't be able to destroy it. This made Xiao Qinlei extremely depressed. His ears were filled with endless curses. Xiao Qinlei turned a deaf ear to him. The only thing they could do now was to drag it out with the other party. Let's see who loses their cool first. Either he would rush out, or the other party would rush in. But Xiao Qinlei was very confident. What was this? He himself often went into seclusion for decades. How could these little fellows dream of using time tactics? He was simply too naive. Time ticked by. The other party still didn't rush in, and the people inside didn't panic. It was so safe here, seeing that it was already afternoon. Suddenly, a mid-grade martial saint expert who was cursing suddenly swayed and murmured. "Strange, why do I feel a little dizzy?" Someone beside him said. He must have used too much strength and shouted too loudly, causing his brain to lack oxygen. That martial saint expert frowned and held his forehead. He said, "Something's wrong. My legs are weak too. My eyes are blurry bad. My tongue is also." Then, before he could finish, he fell to the ground with a thud. His body twitched, and his right leg kicked the ground weakly. Then, his eyes widened and he died. The first-grade supreme martial artist beside him widened his eyes. What? What's going on? Why did he suddenly? He reached out and touched it. Then, he jumped up at once, his eyes popping out of their sockets. Fuck! How did he die? But he didn't notice that with this stare, his eyes didn't just seem to pop out of their sockets, but actually popped out of their sockets. Just hanging in their sockets like that. And he didn't even realize it himself. He turned around and shouted, "Look, look! This bastard actually died for no reason." Then, everyone turned around and took a look at him. They all gasped in unison. You! Another supreme martial artist pointed at him. You! Your eyes! That supreme martial artist shouted in disbelief. How would I know what's going on? He was still talking to me nicely just now. As he said this, he suddenly opened his mouth wide in horror and hissed. Who's talking to me? Why can't I see anything? As he said this, his tongue also suddenly stopped moving. Then, he stood there in a daze. After a while, he sat down on the ground. When he lowered his head suddenly rolled down from his neck. The bones inside had already rotted. All the supreme martial artists of the Xiao clan were in an uproar. What's going on? A fifth-grade supreme martial artist couldn't suppress the fear in his heart, and shouted. Don't panic! What's going on? Even if he's dead, he shouldn't have rotted so quickly. That's right. Is there a ghost here? Ghost your head. Don't scare us. I also feel that something's not right. Finally, the panic reached its peak. Everyone shouted and scattered. Some fell to the ground as soon as they moved, and some ran 2 steps before their legs suddenly spasmed and they fell to the ground. In just 10 minutes, 40 to 50 people had already fallen to the ground. They breathed their last and died. Such a phenomenon made Xiao Qinlei, who had just picked up a cup of tea, choke on the tea in his throat and out of his nostrils. He was dumbfounded. He suddenly remembered a very absurd thing. When he went out to play when he was a child, he saw someone building a house by hammering clay. After the clay was hammered, it needed to be dried in rows on the ground. Then, he walked over and lightly kicked the clay at the back, and saw a whole row of them fall down. Then, he suddenly exclaimed, Invisible poison! Invisible poison! Hold your breath! But, in just a short while, another 100 people had fallen. Xiao Qinlei held his breath and waved his sleeves. A hurricane suddenly appeared and spun fiercely. The corpses on the ground, together with the air in the whole space, were swept away by his internal force. These corpses Who knew if the poison would spread from these corpses again? Then, he shouted in shock and anger. Despicable and shameless villain! If you have the guts, come and fight with me face to face. Always using these dirty tricks, aren't you afraid of tarnishing Tribulation's reputation? After the corpses were thrown out, there were actually only 20-odd 5th-grade Supreme Martial Artists, a dozen 2nd-grade Supreme Martial Artists, 5 7th-grade Supreme Martial Artists, and 1 8th-grade Supreme Martial Artist left beside Xiao Qinlei. The rest. They actually, all died an unnatural death. Even the remaining people had a look of horror on their faces. They kept running their energy to check themselves, to see if the other party was poisoned. It was too scary. This kind of poison could actually silently destroy more than 100 experts, including Supreme Martial Artists. In the midst of panic, suddenly, a 2nd-grade Supreme Martial Artist shouted, You! Strange expressions appeared on the faces of the 20-odd 5th-grade Supreme Martial Artists. Slowly, their eyeballs bulged out of their eye sockets. This time, everyone was really scared to tears. Even someone as powerful as a 5th-grade Supreme Martial Artist couldn't escape? With a roar of despair, a 5th-grade Supreme Martial Artist shouted in grief and indignation. We're dead for sure anyway. Let's rush out and find them to self-destruct. As he spoke, he rose up. 20-odd 5th-grade Supreme Martial Artists responded at the same time. One after another they rose up, but fell down again in midair. When they fell to the ground, they had already turned into a pile of minced meat. But the 5th-grade Supreme Martial Artist who jumped up first suddenly exploded in the air above everyone, turning into minced meat all over the sky, falling down like rain. Everyone, including Xiao Qinlei, was ashen-faced. Everyone could almost hear the sound of their own heartbeats. Then, Xiao Qinlei discovered in horror that even the dozen 2nd-grade Supreme Martial Artists also showed symptoms of the poison. For a moment, he couldn't help but be scared out of his wits. Outside, Chu Yang and the others were closely observing the situation. Suddenly, they heard a loud whistle. Then, a tornado rushed out of the mine. It wrapped up so many bodies and scattered them far away like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. They were all corpses. The poison has already taken effect. Rui Budong's eyes were the sharpest. He said, There are more than 100 corpses here. Looks like their strength has already been pretty much depleted. Mo Tianji frowned and said, Don't be impatient. As long as they don't come out, we definitely can't go in. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, Yes, if we fight head-on now. Every one of them will fight with their lives on the line. Mo Tianji waved and said, Hide first. Don't give them any targets to attack. With a whoosh, everyone disappeared without a trace. As soon as they disappeared, roars of grief and indignation and the sound of explosions could be heard coming from the mine. In the mine, looking at the corpses of the 2nd-grade Supreme Martial Artists on the ground, Xiao Qinlei felt cold all over. This poison was so terrifying. There were only 5 7th-grade Supreme Martial Artists, and 1 8th-grade Supreme Martial Artist by his side. Other than that, there was only GMO who was lying motionless. No one knew if he was dead or alive. The 7 of them all mobilized all their cultivation at the same time, energy flowing through their bodies. It was only until now that, except for Xiao Qinlei, the rest also realized that there was a fatal poison spreading in their bodies at a rapid speed. It couldn't be stopped. At present, they could only use a mouthful of innate vital energy to hold it in, but it could only slow down the speed slightly and couldn't force it out. The 7 of them looked at each other, their faces full of grief. The second shift today would be a little late, and they had to go out for dinner at night. But, no matter how late it was, it would happen. GRQ. Chapter 14:11. In the mine, there was silence. Smart kids remember network super fast hands suddenly. 5 7th-grade Supreme Martial Artists and an 8th-grade Supreme Martial Artist turned to look at Xiao Qinlei at the same time, their gazes complicated. Then, they knelt down stiffly at the same time. Xiao Qinlei shuddered all over. What are you doing? Get up quickly! Elder Master! They knelt and didn't move. The 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist raised his head and said with some difficulty, Today's battle in Aspen Valley is already impossible. The bones of the dragon and phoenix. It seems that our Shao clan can only give up. Shao Chunlei looked up at the sky and heaved a long sigh. How could he not know this? Today, they had already suffered a crushing defeat. It was only now that he finally understood all of the other party's sinister methods. The other party had clearly planned to force them into the mine from the beginning, and then kill them in one fell swoop. The other party showed up first and revealed Tribulation's identity to attract him into a fierce battle. Firstly, it was to intimidate and attract his attention. Secondly, it was also to numb him. Then, they began to attack continuously from the outside in and kill him continuously. They used such despicable means to arouse his anger, making him and his people want to take revenge even at the cost of their lives. Yet, they couldn't do anything about it. The only way was to wait at ease and hide in front of the bones of the dragon and phoenix. However, this was to successfully fall into the other party's most vicious trap. Poisoning in such a close to a sealed place. From the beginning, they had been led by the nose by the other party. From beginning to end, they had never gotten rid of it, not even for a moment. Now, if he still wanted to preserve the bones of the dragon and phoenix, then the only way was to die here too. Shao Chunlei now believed infinitely that although the other party's strength was far inferior to his, as long as he didn't leave, he would die in the other party's hands sooner or later. There was no doubt about this. Elder Master, we are already thousands of years old. The 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist smiled faintly. At the juncture of life and death. Instead, he was free and easy. In these thousands of years, we have enjoyed everything that should have been enjoyed. Everything that shouldn't have been enjoyed. We have enjoyed it too. Everyone's subordinates are full of blood debts. Everyone's lives are no less than 1,000,000 in their hands. We have also been chivalrous. We have also been tyrannical. We have also massacred cities in anger. We have also exterminated clans. We have also snatched beauties and had no descendants. We've done good things, but we've done even more bad things. Today, it's time for us to repay our debt. It's worth it. Wealth, we've all taken it by force, and each of us is as rich as a country. Everyone has enjoyed at least tens of thousands of beauties. At this point in life, I have no regrets. Therefore, regarding today's results, I'm very disappointed. We've already prepared for this. This was how the pugilistic world worked. You'll have to pay for what you did sooner or later. Today's battle. The few of us have already been poisoned. Our only hope lies in Elder Master. That 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist knelt on the ground and said in a low voice, But this Jiang Yi is not dead yet. On his body, perhaps there is still hope for our Shao clan. As long as we can force out his secret, we can obtain the legendary treasure that is not inferior to the bones of the dragon and phoenix. Shao Chunlei took a deep breath, unable to utter a single word. The few of us are going to die anyway. This time, when we go out, we have to stop them with our lives. Old ancestor, do your best to bring this Jiang Yi out. Please don't stay here. Don't think about taking revenge for us. Immediately return to the family. That way, even if the few of us die, we can still smile. After all, we have some value. The 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist smiled. We didn't die in vain. Immediately, in order to dispel Shao Chunlei's last concerns, the 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist said, Elder Master has great gang energy to protect his body. He's not poisoned. This, we can see. It's just that we're useless. We can't cultivate great gang energy. Shao Chunlei's body started to tremble, and his eyes turned red. The 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist's eyes also turned red. The other 7th grade Supreme Martial Artists knelt on the ground, their bodies trembling, but their faces were still full of determination. After he finished speaking, the 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist kowtowed hard on the ground. Then, he stood up abruptly and strode out, shouting, Follow me out. Even if we're going to die, Let's die with more momentum. Lastly, don't let the enemy know that Elder Master has left. The other 5 people responded and stood up at the same time, walking out. Their footsteps were trembling at first, but the more they walked, the more determined they became. After taking 3 steps, there was no turning back. Xiao Qinlei's expression hesitated for a moment, and then it turned into determination. He was also a ruthless and decisive person. He knew that these experts were already poisoned. Even if they didn't go out to fight, they definitely wouldn't be able to survive. A decision like this was the best decision. He lowered his head, and 2 drops of tears fell to the ground. Then, he got up abruptly and walked towards GMO. GMO lay there, unable to move. He said in panic, Elder, what happened? Xiao Qinlei stood quietly in front of him, listening to the robes of the Xiao clan's experts fluttering behind him. They had already rushed out of the mine pit like a hurricane, but he didn't even turn his head back. He just looked at GMO with cold eyes. After a long time, he murmured, Jiangyi, I hope those words of yours are not lies. GMO said fearfully. Elder Master, what are you saying? How would I dare? Xiao Qinlei's eyes flashed with a cold light, low and repressed. Let me ask you. Everyone is poisoned by the shadowless poison, but you, why aren't you poisoned? GMO felt extremely wronged. He shouted, Elder, after being transformed by that purple crystal soul of holy crystal, my body is already impervious to all poisons. Xiao Qinlei's eyes focused and he stared at him. Then, he raised his right hand and swore with sincerity. If this junior hadn't been injured, I would have already rushed out to fight with my brothers. I would have lived and died together with them. I would have died together with them. I would have died together with them. Heaven and earth can bear witness to this. If there is a single word that I say, I am willing to be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Mo's words were indeed from the bottom of his heart. But the brothers he mentioned were not the Xiao clan brothers. But how would Xiao Qinlei know this? Seeing that he said so sincerely, his eyes couldn't help but soften a little. He said lightly, It's rare for you to have such intentions. Then, his eyes focused. You can already move your right hand? GMO didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Elder, my right hand is the only one with the lightest injury. I can move it on the same day. Xiao Qinlei thought about it carefully. It was indeed so. He couldn't help but relax. He said, Jiangyi, this old man hopes that your soul of the purple crystal and holy crystal really exists. GMO said solemnly. Don't worry, Elder. I know that my family is ruined and my family members are dead. Using my family's name as a guarantee is no longer enough to earn your trust. But I am willing to guarantee with my own integrity. There is absolutely not a single word of falsehood. If Luo Kadi or Rui Badong and the others heard Jimo's guarantee with his own integrity, they would definitely spit on his face. You don't speak a single word of truth every day, and what integrity do you have? You actually dare to guarantee with your own integrity? Who would believe your words? Definitely an idiot. But, how would Xiao Qinlei know about this? Even more so, he wouldn't know how slippery this sincere Jiang Yi in front of him was. The number of times he had spoken the truth in his life could be counted on one hand. Hearing that, he nodded very comfortingly. All right. He took a step forward and lifted GMO up, clamping him under his ribs. GMO let out a scream, almost fainting from the pain. Cold sweat broke out all over his body. Elder! Gently! Gently! The broken bones in his body were completely dislocated in several places by this hug. Xiao Qinlei's eyes flashed, and he was finally completely relieved. He said, Don't speak, I will bring you out. But he also changed GMO into a more comfortable position. He carried him on his shoulders. Although it was still more uncomfortable, it was better than clamping him just now. It was already a lot more preferential treatment. GMO seemed to be in so much pain that he didn't know where to put his hands and feet. With a stifled scream, a right hand touched his own buttocks. He moaned softly. Oh my God! It was so painful that I almost squeezed out all my grains. That was close. Xiao Qinlei snorted coldly. Hearing that the silence outside had turned into the sound of an intense battle, he exerted force in his legs and suddenly shot up. Like an arrow leaving the bow, he rushed out of the cave. He actually didn't even take a second look at the bones of the dragon and phoenix that he was destined to miss in the cave. It could be said that he was able to take things and let them go. Outside, this supreme martial artist rushed out like a madman. What followed was a carpet bombing. But after a round of attacks, he realized that he didn't hit anything. He became even more furious and shouted, "Coward, show yourself if you have the guts." There was silence all around. The man continued to curse. However, no one responded in the end. Everyone could feel the poison in their bodies growing stronger and stronger. Gradually, they could no longer suppress it, and slowly went berserk. Everyone worked together as one, and simply headed east. Along the way, they slaughtered their way over with earth-shattering momentum. Regardless of whether there was anyone there or not, he used all his strength anyway. He cut down everything he saw and destroyed everything he saw. He rushed out with great momentum. Mo Tianji frowned. He said, "Did you find Xiao Qinlei?" The brothers said at the same time, "No." Mo Tianji frowned and said, "Luo Kedi, start the battle." Luo Kedi responded and scolded loudly, "That little bastard, I am here, are you all fucking blind? Damn it, I just gave you medicine and it still can't cure your stupidity." This sentence was really adding fuel to the fire. He was attacking with the idea of killing one is enough, killing two is worth it. Hearing this, he flew into a rage and turned to attack. Luo Kedi flew and scolded, "Oh, if you guys can kill me." He flew as he spoke. Beside him, Xie Danqiong and the others appeared and shouted, "Kill these bastards." The eyes of this supreme martial artist of the Shao clan turned even redder. He gritted his teeth and rushed over without a word. Everyone's eyes were red. They didn't want their lives anymore. If they still couldn't kill someone, it would be a great loss. Seeing people rushing over, Luo Kedi and the others waited for them to catch up. Then, they shouted and disappeared. They searched with red eyes. At this moment, there was a whooshing sound, and a figure flew straight out of the mine like a meteor. He didn't even look at the battle, and flew straight to the east. It was Xiao Qinlei. A few miles away, Yulin Xue raised his eyebrows and murmured, "Is it finally my turn to make a move?" Xiao Qinlei was extremely fast. Chu Yang and the others couldn't stop him in time at all. Xiao Qinlei was already 10,000 feet high in the air. At this moment, GMO, who was on his shoulder, moaned and said, "Elder, I feel so uncomfortable. It seems like..." Xiao Qinlei was shocked. He asked, "What's wrong?" He hoped that nothing would happen to this last bit of leverage. He looked down. But he felt a chill in his heart. A dagger was stabbed into his heart. Straight into his heart. GMO, on his shoulder, blinked and smiled at his raised head. "How about I kill you?" You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.